What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday, and this
Monday.
There we go. We'll get it one day. This week we team up with the guys over at Real Estate Addicts Podcast. All three of them on the podcast this week. First time ever getting three people on top of the already three people. So try to stay in tune with who's talking. But we dig into actually a lot. We talk a lot about kind of overlapping their full-time job and getting into development. And just some of the, Mark wanted to call us out for working with no budgets. We correct him on that.
We put that fire out quick.
Yeah. I think that we politely engaged and everyone defended themselves very diplomatically.
Yeah, and we found John's trigger points.
Rabbit hole.
No surprise.
Rabbit hole.
Good listen, guys. Well, Mark, this all started... Well, I think it started before that, but I keep referencing your Kanye West thing you posted on. You were like, I'm pulling a Kanye West and calling out the Modern Craftsman. So here we are. So for anyone that's not listening, this is going to be difficult because it's the first time we've had three.
Wait, for anyone who's not listening?
Not watching this, because no one else is watching it.
This is awesome.
For anyone that's listening, this is going to be difficult because there's three of you.
For anyone who's not listening, you're not going to hear this, but...
So I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourself individually so they can try to follow along with your vocal tone.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. Mark Savatsky from Choose Boston. And Dan Ray and I have a podcast called The Real Estate Addicts. So we're in real estate development, and we're sort of builder developers, which...
Whoa. We just
Did we approve plugs?
Yeah, we didn't approve
Did we
plugs.
approve plugs?
That's true.
Keep going.
Well, I was just going to make a distinction here that we're not gentlemen developers, which is, the guys with the shirts and ties. We're actually GCing all of our own work and developing our own product.
There's Mark. Dan?
Yep, Dan Rubin, HRV Homes. Ray and I are partners, so Mark is kind of like the third wheel.
Right.
Business partners. This is just going right downhill. Yeah.
Way to clarify.
Ray Hurto. And so Dan does a lot of our project management and design, and I do a lot of the back end office work and all of the fun stuff that he doesn't want to do.
Ray too?
He's just here to hang out.
He's a silent observer.
Well, that's
silent partner.
It's funny, Ray. Like guys that like being in the office think it's fun, and what Dan does is not fun, and it's vice versa for Dan. Right?
Oh yeah. That's why it works. That's why the partnership has worked well, because we just we don't clash. I hate spreadsheets. I hate finances. I hate all that stuff. And then Ray hates the day-to-day project management, design, and stuff like that. So it's worked well because of that, I think.
How'd you guys start? How'd you guys become a partnership?
We met at our corporate jobs out of school, and so came close. Sorry?
Doing what?
We were computer engineering, we were IT nerds.
We started off in audit, and you're nobody's friend in that department. Nobody's friend. And then we moved to we parted ways and moved around. And
you guys broke up.
What's that?
Said you guys broke up.
We broke up. We had actually, I think I was Dan's, not second choice, but he had tried this with a few other people and found that they weren't really pulling their weight in the partnership. So, he approached me afterwards and said, I was thinking of doing this, like flip. That was our first project, was a 3-unit half-gutted building that was that had a fire. And I was like, yeah, why not? My dad was a carpenter. I was his apprentice over the summers when I was in high school. So let's give it a go. What do we have to lose? And kind of that's how it started.
You guys just went right into a 3-unit full gut.
Yep. Had no idea what we were doing.
Made no money on it.
No, made no money.
Nothing. Yeah. It was fun.
Took loans out on a retirement, credit card debt up the wazoo.
I gotta say, putting construction costs on your credit card isn't like a great strategic way to use the capital stack.
No, and probably learn later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you
learned a ton. So
did you guys quit your jobs to do this, or was this on the side?
This originally, at first, it was a hobby. So, it was kind of like for fun on the side, and be like, hey, maybe we can make some extra cash. And then, as things grew and as we got more and more projects, we realized that it kind of was starting to form into a real business.
How long did you guys do it on the side?
5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 2010 to 2015, Dan was able to jump out he got about a 6-month head start due to some corporate events that had happened at the company we were at. And God, he would call me every day and he'd just be like, hey, I'm over here now. And hey, I'm over here. And this is so great. And I was like, Dan, stop rubbing it in my face. And so once the year end was over, I think I remember going back to work and seeing my boss, and I couldn't tell him the first day I was back. I knew he'd be sad. So I told him the second day after the new year. And I was like, yeah, remember how I said I might leave? It's happening. So
how long, so obviously the first one you made no money, but how long did it take until you guys started making money? Because that's what I think a lot of people don't realize in what you guys do. There's so many air quote developers and guys that are flipping, and you guys are in Boston, and Boston's
everybody's a developer.
Yeah, and Boston is such an insane market where there's obviously an advantage to that. But was it your second build that you were profitable or broke even on, or was it 5 years in?
We after we didn't make any money on the first one, we kind of pivoted a little bit and started buying some rentals. So bought a number of buildings that we still own that we rent out. And then once that allowed us, because some of those buildings needed some work, and so it allowed us to do some smaller renovations and kind of get a little bit more familiar with the process and the costs associated with renovating.
All right, so while he looks for his headphones and
I
a new
can
microphone,
answer that.
Yeah. So because I think that's a big and I was going to stop him there. Where did you said that first off, you guys are young, so you took out a loan against your retirement to do this first project.
From what we had.
Sure, you didn't make any money on that project, and then you go and buy, and he said, quote, a handful of buildings or a couple of buildings rentals. Where is that capital coming from?
So the first initial capital, it was really just 2 more buildings. He bought a 3-family in 2008. And then in 2010 had that opportunity that we told you about, that 3-family. That took us a year to finally unwind when we sold 2 of the 3 units. So now we're in 2011, 2012. We bought a 3-family, and the capital that we got back from that 3-family rehab is what we parlayed into the next one. And then the third 3-family that between the 2 of us we had acquired, I had gotten by retaking a loan on my 401k after I had paid it back and using FHA. So I was able to get I was paying mortgage insurance, but I was able to put a small amount down. I think it was 5% maybe. So the amount of capital was parlayed from the first project for that 3-family. And then a year later, some additional funds from a retirement account to get the next 3-family.
I think what's
did you guys hear that? Sorry.
No worries.
Did you guys hear that?
No.
Did you hear? You didn't hear a beeping? I was trying to figure out what the hell. I thought it was somebody's computer beeping, and I was sitting on one of my daughter's walkie-talkies. I was like, "What is that noise coming from?"
Technical issues.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think the lesson is that rehabs or rentals rather are a little bit more forgiving than a condo play. So, the level of perfection that you need to hit and the buyer punch lists aren't as demanding. And it's sort of like buying a stock that's like a buy and hold. If you're going to own this thing for a number of years, it's I don't really care how it performs over the next 2 weeks. I want to own this for a long time.
Mark,
So
I understand that.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people understand that rental market. The big question, and you and I have talked offline before, and I feel like you do a good job explaining, is how you make that money work for you. Because I think anyone that's looking to get into this is, kind of shooken by the fact that I need all this capital, or I need to save all this money, or I need to go take a huge loan out to buy this building, when the reality is that's not the case. A lot of time, I'm not saying you don't need capital. It takes capital to start, but a lot of times you're buying and you're using the equity in these buildings, and the equity in rental is also a different market because you're able to use the rental income to offset those things. I guess I'm trying to unravel that for those that, might be wanting to get into it.
Look, I think there's no secret that it's a very capital intensive business. But I also think that one of the secrets in the industry is that there's a ton of privilege, and people don't necessarily wear that badge on their chest that they had a trust fund or inherited money or came from family money. I would tell you that there's a lot of that out there. But I think if you're doing it organically, I think you need to bring something to the partnership. So you find a money guy, and you're the one who hustles, finds the deal, manages the project, and it probably doesn't feel great at the end of that project that you're going to give up probably a good bit of that equity and profit to the guy who basically just wrote the check. But I think that's just the deal with the devil to start, that doubling and tripling so that you can eventually fund the deal on your own.
Well, if it's not a money person as an individual, then it's going to be an entity. And that's where the term hard money comes from. So that would be an entity that is not a bank, but they will lend and they will take everything. Like the second and third projects that we did, we used hard money, and those individuals got more interest payments to them than we earned as profit, pre-tax profit.
Bingo.
Did you pull any payments to yourselves throughout that project, or was it more sweat equity?
We just got paid at the end. So
Okay.
We didn't take a check until everything else was done.
So you had a day job during that project, covered your expenses, and then
How are you
this was
financing
kinda
your
like
deals
a side
or your projects?
side piece?
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean,
Like Dan,
one other strategy is a development fee, right? So you can put a line item in the budget and it's all above board, and just pay yourself from that development fee, and they can take the profits off of the end.
Yeah, and then that would be your payment for the deal. So you get a fixed fee. That's how I do my projects now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't get any equity at the end, and we're trying to restructure that now.
Developer fee rather than equity. Yeah.
I'm doing a builder
when we
fees. So mine's
when
the
we
same.
first started, we didn't know that. So we did transition to that afterwards.
Yeah. So I basically have the same structure as if it was a renovation or a custom build. We have our percentage fee, and then our management. We're trying to do it more so now that we have some track record with vintage that we can then
That's
do,
cool.
50-50 at the end. But you take risk along with that. It's like starting a business, having a family, having employees. Do you want to acquire that risk? Do I need that risk? How do I leverage my brand that sells the properties and not get an upside to it? That's kind of all the stuff that's running through my head with on the spec market for us. When we have basically investors that finance it. Sometimes. Good.
Are they giving you a certain amount of money to get up and running and then buy all your materials?
So we run it just like a regular job, Tyler. So we give a budget, and then we, percent complete, we bill for it, and then our management is rolled into that weekly.
Is that typically a single investor or multiple?
It depends. Sometimes it's singles, depending on what their capital is, and then sometimes they have preferred investors. And again, I don't get that deep into it. I would love to, but it's more of me sitting in the corner listening to the conversation to try and learn a little bit. And there's preferred lenders out of that group. That means they put more money into the basket, so they get paid first. So usually what I found is that if I was a builder involved with that transaction and there was preferred investors, since I'm sweat equity, I would get paid last, depending on when that sold and how well it did, because I didn't put anything in there that was at risk at the time. So
The most common
as far as
structure,
your profit, though, right?
it would be it would be both. It'd be profit and I would be making nothing during the project.
Who's paying for materials at that point? You?
I haven't done it yet. I would assume yes,
Okay.
because insurance-wise and liability would have to go through me, so I cover it.
So you have more risk with that.
Yeah, there's definitely more risk.
A primary lender, a conventional lender, is going to cover 80% typically. You're going to be responsible for that 20% of the capital stack. And the most common way that that's raised is through a general partner, limited partner structure. And, those investing are limited and they're passive. And you as the GP, have the decision making.
Yeah, I feel like that went right over my head.
Yeah.
Can you don't break it down? Just.
Sure.
Yeah, he dropped like 3 words, so I was like, all right, hold on, I gotta look that up.
Yeah, you're like a teenager texting someone right now. It's like emojis and like, give me the breakdown of this stuff.
So basically, it's a corporate structure. It's basically the way the corporate entity is structured. In terms now, are there, Mark? Because you're going to be more versed in this than I am. Now, are there?
Yes.
You said passive and active. Are you saying that some people their investment and the amount that they earn is treated differently, or?
No, I mean, certainly there's passive and active treatment for tax purposes, but put that aside. I'm just saying like that the guy on the boots day to day, he's the GP, the general partner, and the LPs don't get say in what color the cabinets are or, any other number of decisions. But I think the other buzzword there was capital stack. So just a really basic term. If you think of it like a stack of money, like where is each piece coming from? On very complicated deals like low-income housing projects, there's probably 20 different sources that contribute to the stack of money you need for a development. On our deals, it's usually primary lender, 80%, and 20% is this general partner, limited partner.
And what are you guys putting up for equity? Are you guys putting up one of your other projects?
You're probably signing personally.
Okay.
If you can get a deal without that, it's expensive and you need.
Yeah. And then you guys are making an LLC based on like the property address for each project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what checks get cut out of?
Yeah. And it's extremely important that everything is separated because, and we know some developers that do this, don't commingle funds. You can certainly take title to multiple properties and account for everything that way, but we did that. And even after like 2, we just said, this is crazy. So we started having separate accounts for everything. Insurance is all under those separate LLCs. It's
also liability wise too.
But that's where I think you guys are crazy, Johnny, Tyler, Nick, because every job you do is under, your entity, your LLC, and you're rolling it all. Each time we do a job, we have a one-off LLC. And, in theory, as long as you execute properly, that's your risk there. I mean, certainly we sign personally.
Mark, are you talking about spec though, or are you talking about them as contractors? Because I don't agree with you in the contracting role.
Sure, contractors.
They're not going to open an LLC for every job they do.
Yeah, well, we had a contractor on a larger job try to create an LLC called like Property Address LLC Builders, and we're like, no. We hired, big general contracting firm. You're not going to do basically what we do, which is one-off entities.
I feel like there's a lot of contractors who take that approach where they could just change their name when a job doesn't go right.
With a magnet on the truck.
Yeah.
I also think that I also won't receive checks unless they're through that LLC. Meaning I'm not going to take a different address for payment on a different LLC.
It's like when a sub says, "Hey, can you write that out to myself?"
Yeah. No bueno.
So Mark, you're obviously not partners with HRV. A little bit about your background. I know you mentioned Choose Boston, but are you? Yeah. Is that full time for you?
Yeah. No, it's not. So I work with a development group in the South End called New Boston Ventures, and we're focused on 30, 40, 50 plus unit buildings. And so I'm more or less their construction muscle, which is awesome because I get to see that large scale stuff.
Did you label yourself? Because that's pretty heavy.
Wasn't it? It was cool,
yeah.
right?
No one saw the double gun salute that he put up.
Well, that's what I was brought in there for. But anyway, I'd say that at the same time, I'm doing 1 to 2 projects on my own, and I'm focused more on like 5, 7, 9 unit residential.
And they're aware of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's all above board, and I think it's mutually beneficial in a lot of ways.
How so?
because I think a lot of the stuff that I learned from projects that I'm doing on my own, I bring to bear on their project, on the bigger stuff. And, I think the benefits of, I'm working with some of the smartest zoning attorneys, geotechnical engineers, you name it, on these $50-60 million jobs. So as I'm doing a project, I'm able to learn from those guys.
Are they of the mindset where if you're getting done what you need to on the job, they don't necessarily care what you're doing on the side?
That, yes, Tyler, for sure. And plus there's no conflict, right? Like if I were to start going after a 40-unit building, I think there would be a real problem. But I don't think that they want the stuff in, East Boston that I'm looking.
But what about use of subs and vendors?
Good question. Vendors may be a little overlap, but no real overlap in subs.
Good. Yeah. Because I felt like I've been in companies where bosses have been very cognizant of what subs are overlapping if someone's at your house. Like, who's at your house? Like, what's going on? And I know some subs, good subs, will make relationships with a PM or an assistant PM on the ground. That way they have a little bit of pull with the guys that make decisions day to day. But I know there's only one company I was with that they were like, that's basically stealing.
Yep.
Like you're never rolling in working your house into a project on the job. Like that's never happening. But because like right now we let our guys work for some of our guys. Some of our subs work for some of our employees. Yeah, at their own personal houses.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of PMs get let go for similar shenanigans.
Yeah, if they're rolling it into a project.
Well, yeah, that's
a problem.
Stealing at that point.
Yeah.
But having a relationship. Some of the subs I've brought into companies, so like the benefit has helped the company because of relationships I've had with plasterers, finish guys, vendors. Why would I not have something delivered to my house that I'm paying for on my dime? Because I help bring a relationship to the company to save them money on a project. That is my job.
Right. I think it's immediately just looked down upon because it's like, oh, are they, the immediate thought is like, he's doing work on their house for free and rolling it into another job, where it's like, it's not the case. If it's, if it's communicated and, it's fun. Like if it's fair, it's fair. If it's not stealing, it's not stealing.
Isn't it also the subs' right to choose jobs if they're being hired as independent contractors, so long as it doesn't affect the contract they have with the other companies?
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying is like as long as it's honest and truthful, it's that relationship is fine.
Yeah, I think so much of that's communication too, and if you believe that there's an issue, you should reach out and shed light on it, and then ask their opinion.
But I also think my guys should deserve the benefit if we have a ton of land. Like even John, my guy today, he's like, he left early and I called him and he's like, yeah, I'm at the nursery, blah, blah. I'm like, what nursery are you at? Are you at Newview? Because you should be. Because we're doing 5 landscapes over the next 2 weeks in 2 months. Go get some benefit out of that for your own house.
Right.
Like, and he's like, oh yeah, then I'll go do that. Like there should be some reward for the mass amount of work that we're doing. I don't take advantage of it. I'm still finishing my house. But it's like my guys, I want them to see a little bit. Whether it's like, I remember a couple of years ago, he wanted a rose for Mother's Day, so he bought a rose bush and had it delivered on the project and cut down on delivery. It's like, I think there's little rewards, but Tyler, to your point, if I see that and let's say someone had their house plastered and then I watch the plaster numbers creep up, I still have to do my job and my due diligence to make sure numbers fit within the numbers. If they don't, then we have an issue. But you're right.
But to Tyler's question, Mark, as far as like balancing your time, if you have an active 7-unit building and an active 40-unit building, what's that balancing act look like?
It's funny because on the bigger you would think, just if you're an uninformed third party here, you'd say 3-unit building takes much less time to manage than does a 45-unit building. But it's not really true. On the very large stuff, you have experts from every different sector. When we're managing a brownstone renovation, I'm like, it's a lot more time consuming. I'm putting together the specs. I am, often, the person running everything into ISD or the building department. But, certainly on the big stuff, when there's a fire and there's a crisis, I'll put down what I'm doing and I respond immediately and go, dive into it. But so long as I'm doing my job well and planning and preparing and preventing fires, then I can do both.
God, I hate that term.
What, fires?
Yeah.
Why? It's...
What do you think? What do you think of meeting maker?
It's such an overused term. I'm putting out fires.
Yeah.
Are you really though? Like, shouldn't you be on your game where you're kind of looking at it where, yeah, it's going to happen day to day, but I'm not a firefighter. Like, I don't need to be like, oh, I'm doing my job, I'm putting out fires. No, your job is to manage it.
Well, yeah, you don't want fires. That's the obvious thing.
But why is it obvious and why does it always get used?
I don't know, because sometimes things come out of left field and they come at you hard. And
that's your goddamn job.
No.
That's where you're supposed to step up. That's where you're supposed to solve it right then and there. It's not a fire. It's just another situation that you deal with. And it wasn't easy. I'm sorry.
So your issue is with the actual term fires.
It's all of them. There are always issues. They see them coming in the curve. You think a batter's like, shit, it's another curveball. I can't hit it. Like, no, you got to go out there and learn the curve and get it and swing for the fences.
Baseball analogy.
I know, right? Not hockey.
Mark, do you have any examples?
Yeah,
unpredictable.
We built one of the first automated parking garages in the city of Boston, and we're getting towards inspections, and the state elevator board shows up, and all of a sudden, kind of create a rule that any plumbing that's within this space is considered in an elevator shaft. And now you have a building opening up in 2 weeks, and you need to figure out a way to fire rate, move all that, or somehow read through the code and come up with an argument for why that somewhat ambiguous language should be interpreted to your favor. That's the sort of thing where, like,
so we should celebrate that.
I'm not celebrating. Well,
I'm just saying, you put out a fire, that's kind of a big deal, right? And the fire trucks show up with all the lights, big deal.
I think it's just a figure of speech, Johnny.
I didn't know that you didn't like putting out fires.
What we've talked about that term so many times.
Before.
John has always
it's a trigger. It's a trigger.
It's not. He's not.
It's not Mark.
It's not Mark, and it's not the fact that this stuff comes up. It's just the terminology of putting out fires. I think it was. I think that kid. I forget his name. I don't think we were allowed to use his name when he showed up in my office. He said something about fires, and Johnny went off on that one.
I probably blacked out. I don't remember any of this. We can cut it out.
You do 108 episodes. You got to forget what you said.
That kid had no idea what was coming. But
see, I feel like I put out for any time that I have a sub on a job. It's putting out fires or babysitting, or basically dummy proofing everything. I feel like.
I guess that's the question. Is like, how do I think about my guys. My guys live on the job site, and we're putting an incredible amount of detail into all the things. And it's like when we step off site is when stuff gets missed. So I think to John's point, and my question is that balancing that, and obviously when something comes up, you drop what you're doing on, say, the brownstone, and you jump right into this parking situation, for example. But I guess the question would be, if you weren't doing something else, would those issues arise, or would they have been prevented?
No, I'm going to say there's enough hours in the day, and if you're focused and doing your job right, these things just come up. Like it's part and parcel of the nature of our world, right? Like these things come out of left field. Is that an okay figure of speech, John?
Well, is that okay? Is that a good term? Yeah, that's good.
Curveball out of left field.
All right, out of left field. I gotta watch my.
How do I move Mark and John from being beside each other on my screen? So
they're apart from each other on mine.
A good question is, how do you turn one off and let the other one turn on? Like, I do feel like what I do daily, I know it is my job. There is no turn off, whether it's 3 a.m. or whatever. I'm thinking about that. You have to have this clear determination. Like, you know what? It's 3 o'clock. Work, like my punch in, I get to punch out now. And then you get to roll in. I just feel like there's a huge amount of blending going on with what you're doing.
Hey, look, I think it's a very fortunate position, and I don't take it for granted. I think it's fairly unique to be able to be offered that opportunity to do the $30-40 million projects and also be able to work on your own stuff and not have kind of resentment for that. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I think that they know that I've done a great job now for 6 years, watching their interests on the larger stuff.
So are you kind of what John's speaking to? Is there a separation, or are you basically working on your own projects and your company's projects at the same time? Like, it's not, hey, it's 5:00, I'm going to work on my personal stuff now, or is it just both whenever you can get it done?
I think we need a safe word. I think he needs to bail on this conversation.
I feel like if it were me, I would just be like, okay, it's 10:00 at night. I'm working on whatever needs to get done, whether it's for my personal jobs or my employer's jobs. I don't know if I would distinguish between, like, obviously I'd get done the stuff I needed to 8 to 4:30 or whatever it is. But I feel like if I were in your position and I had that benefit, that I would probably be doing both after hours.
Look, I like how you guys go straight at the heart of it. And I'll be really candid. I should have said this earlier. I approached the guys a number of years ago with this proposal, and I was ready to sort of maybe just go fully onto my own. But I said, I really like what I'm doing with your group here, and I'd like to stay a part of the team. And we worked out a compromise that worked for both parties, whereby I took a concession on my compensation structure, and I was able to split my time, and we made that split and that break just totally out in the open. And
that's a huge part of this that clarifies an incredible amount.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. That
Sure.
Like the comment Tyler made earlier about communication, right? Like, you went and explained exactly the position that you were in and that you were entertaining, and that you proposed, and the fact that you took a concession with the understanding that you were gonna blend these two jobs together.
Yeah.
And that was mutually decided upon. That's just really important to note.
Yeah, no different from when a sub's doing work on your house. Disclosure, right? Just if you put everything on the table and you're open and honest about it, I think that prevents the conflict later.
And maybe put it in writing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's not bad.
Johnny's not a writing kind of guy.
No, I am. Like, I've been down that road.
John, the hardwood floor sub was refinishing today, and he put his stain rags in a bag outside and told the customer not to throw that in their normal trash can. So I was almost putting out fires.
Yeah,
today.
really? That's a literal one. Yeah, I'm with you.
I was like, why don't you just leave that outside for now? I'll come get it tomorrow.
Mark, you had mentioned earlier, I think on one of your podcast episodes, is that us as builders, custom builders, don't understand, or maybe it was Dan. Dan's laughing. That we don't understand budgets, and I really want to unravel that for the next.
He's probably right. I suck at it.
For the next however
I'm terrible at it too, so that's Ray's job.
But you got a guy.
I got a guy.
Let's not overhype me here. I give a number and then I cry as the number goes up as well sometimes. So.
Well, I guess that's my question is what was the intent behind that? Because I think that there was a lot of confusion, at least on my end, as to what that means. Because every project I work on, we have a budget, and whether that budget's $1 million or $500,000, we still have a budget. So I guess what was
super stressful?
Huh?
It's super stressful.
It's always stressful.
You mentioned the Kanye comment earlier, right?
Yeah.
Call it the Taylor Swift moment. We were doing a live pod, and we sort of said that we think that sometimes the very fine custom home builders don't necessarily have to make the trade-offs that we do. You talk about good, better, best. And like, that's the hardest part of our job. Like if I wanted to just go the best on every single thing, I would have a great product, but I'd be out of business within the year. And so that's the pressure that I don't necessarily see when I'm working with clientele who, may have trust funds and family, ridiculous money.
But,
well, how do you establish your budgets, Nick? Like, do you work with, like, do you go in? Yeah, exactly.
It's darts, right? Isn't it darts? You just put stuff up there.
John, you're on fire today.
All sports analogies.
Is darts sports?
Oh yeah.
As long as it's not
That's
firefighting.
the only
analogies,
sport that they're
dude.
playing on TV right now, I believe.
There's no firefighting analogies.
Yeah, it's established with the client. You know, I mean, not all of my clients are trust fund or come from money. I would say the majority of them don't or are not.
But you hope to be in a place where they are. If you're
Sure, I mean,
yeah.
you know what? To be honest, all I want to do is I want to work for people that value creativity and craftsmanship. I don't give a shit how much money they want to spend on it. I just want them to value what we do. And if that's a $1 million house or a $10 million house, it doesn't matter. Like but there's still, you know, we're not going into any of our jobs and saying, yeah, we don't know what it's going to cost and we'll just, you know, run with it. We spend a lot of time constructing those budgets, working with them, you know, understanding right off the bat, is there a target in mind? What's the target? Is it, and when we hear that target, is it something that we can align our approach with? And if we can't, we're up front and saying, listen, just, you know, based on the way we execute, we can or can't, you know, meet that target. And if financially it doesn't work, then we're just not the right fit.
I also feel like if you were to dumb it down as far as budget goes, that I know you've mentioned before, Nick, that the bigger numbers doesn't necessarily mean more money in your pocket. And I like yes and no, but even on a very simple analogy would be, I think that the bigger numbers and the larger budgets affords you more time to do the job and to kind of overbuild it and take your time and put details into that project. And I think that it creates more work for you, creates more hours for you, but it's not necessarily more money for. I mean, it is, yes, but it's not like you're making more money per day. It's just that you have more days on the project. I mean, even think I just went and I'm doing a little side job in between while the sub's on the job. And the people said it's installing a new jam and historic mahogany screen door on the house. And she didn't ask me for a price. She said, no, just come do it. And that affords me to be able to go spend a day and a half over there and work through the details and make it right. And I'm still charging the same amount per hour. If she didn't want that quality, I would go in there in a half day and trim it out and be done and walk away from it. She's getting a different product. I'm getting paid more because I'm spending more time on it, but I'm not necessarily making more money.
And, you know, to speak to, and I'm not a developer. I haven't developed anything, but I've been down the path of exploring it and to the point where we've looked at property and things like that. And I've always, you know, one of the reasons it hasn't worked out is, you know, we talk about hard money and investors and things like that. They're, you know, Ray, they're your kind of guy. It's a spreadsheet, and I put the numbers on a spreadsheet, and it doesn't make sense. It's like, no, you gotta buy that down. You gotta cut costs here, and I'm looking at it as if I'm going to develop a property, I'm going to develop a property to my standard, and that's if that standard is higher and more expensive, then I need to market that. Mark, you're shaking your head, but that.
The problem is that sometimes there's not enough juice in the game at the end of the day that you can then mark it up enough for an investor to get their cut.
I get it. Maybe the investor doesn't. Maybe you're not doing with an investor.
There's definitely not 2 or 3 paychecks in a project all the time.
There's definitely not what?
2 or 3 paychecks in a single development project. I think that's a huge problem that I see out there is groups that come in with 3 partners, or there's, you know, it's like, how are each of you making money? I mean, I run fairly lean for that reason.
Right. I just, you know, to go back to the thought is like, Tyler, you say the smaller job or the more expensive jobs don't usually or don't always lead to more money. And I would agree with that because I think of some of our really small, very expensive per square foot projects are, you know, there's a lot of money there, but it's so expensive because the amount of detail and the amount of work it takes that we tend to then overbuild more because it's like this, their level of expectation is even higher. So those like for us, on the spreadsheet, the margins are less because there's so much more that we're putting into it than if we were to go in and do a smaller, say, less expensive bathroom project or renovation project where we get in and we streamline and we're not overthinking or overbuilding it because the expectations aren't there. And I think from our standpoint, we're trying to always be in the point where I always say that I want the client's expectations to be nearly unreasonable. And that because I like that challenge. Like I want them to expect something that is unreasonable. So we're challenged with that to figure out just how good we can make that.
But that you need to dial that in a little bit because I think there's a couple different frequencies that are involved with that. That if you're describing all that, I feel like when you're doing that, I'm thinking about the details, not so much the budget, the time, or the quality is obviously there. Mm-hmm. I feel like, to go back to your question, Dan, was every project, there's quality, time, and budget that all has to get juggled around. Sometimes a client has a budget that's comfortable and their details and their wants are very high. So is it time? Like, do we have a time restriction on this thing? Like I have a client now that they're going to start their family, having a baby based on what we have to do. So time is of the essence. So do we have to pay a little bit more to hit that time frame, that window, or, that's all the kind of discussion. I feel like, Nick, to that point, I mean, the quality and execution's going to be there. There's never a question in that. It's just how do we navigate these other factors that are really hard to do. It's like, hey, what are we going to do? We're going to do, is budget the hard line? Is it a bag of money that I've been talked about with clients? It's like, I have $2.2 million to build this. All right, so time can float because we're going to get deals on individual people to make this happen. So if it rolls a year, we cool with that. Like it's setting those expectations. So it isn't always the same kind of playbook, at least for me, to kind of work through it. No,
I mean, just the unreasonable expectations doesn't necessarily have to be about what it looks like. It can be, like you said, John, time or budget. And it's always working to the fullest and putting out the best product, regardless of the dollar value that's associated with that. And I think for us, at least for me, we're not looking. I think I guess the big difference here between developing for yourself is that you're making sure that you're buying things, the nicest thing you can for the least amount of money. So the bottom line has
for the best value.
Yeah,
the best value.
I mean, the way we approach a development project is, if there's 10 categories, it's save, spend, and like we have to pick the place that we go in and we think is going to make impact. From my perspective, I just wish that you guys, like what I see is there aren't many like what I call easy wins, like things that I look at and I'm like, wow, I really admire how he just like, instead of using a 3-piece molding, got a speed molding and did, just made that labor. Like I see a lot of things where I'm like, wow, that labor took a long time. It's gorgeous. But like, geez, I wonder if I could have gotten 85% of the benefit with half of the labor.
You see that with my stuff? Because I'm using Kukin, which has saved me a bundle because it looks like a 3-piece and it's cut out of 1 piece, and it's changed the game for us in the market in Wellesley for what we do. I
love it, and I don't mean to be so specific with that example. That's just like something I just grasped out of thin air.
I know you don't follow me, but I just figured, and I wanted to see if that was kind of how it goes.
So you're basically saying that to get to that 110%. You could hit a mark that's not that far below that, spending far less time. That's what you're kind of saying, correct? Because I agree with you 100%. I think that there's things that I do where it's like I could get to 95% in a day, but to get to 100%, it takes 3 days.
Like I've watched things where I'm like, wow, you could have just caulked that, and someone would have to have been on a ladder with their nose to that molding to have ever seen or perceived the benefit. And like, sure, I do respect the craftsmanship, but like at a certain point, I think that the consideration of value versus cost needs to be looked at as a developer, but not
as a developer. Yeah, because I think we aren't necessarily the ones dictating that. That's customer for us.
Yep. And some
But as
customers
a
want
developer,
that,
yes.
and that's awesome. And they appreciate it, and they're willing to pay, and super.
Do you not think that there's a market there to develop something of that caliber work?
No, I don't.
Not without massive risk.
Well, hang on here.
Forget the risk.
I want to go to
Right.
Nick. I want to go to your project. You did a project in Jeffrey's Point, right? That kind of set the market for the highest sale in that area.
Yeah.
And you pulled out all the stops, right? So what did that look like from the number standpoint? Do you know?
No, because it wasn't. No, because we were hired. We were hired by the investor. And we, that budget did go up.
That was hugely risky. That he pulled it off, and I love the product. But
I know,
man, that took some stones, and good for him.
I know, and
It
we
worked.
went in. I think we probably end up spending $100 more than they expected, because it just stuff started changing, and we started adding, and at the end of the day, it wasn't about to be honest, they weren't looking to do that for how much money they could make. They wanted to restore that home back to what it once was.
Were they the end buyer? Were they
Nope.
They sold it, right?
They sold it to the guy that lives next door and watched the whole thing get built.
So also, as a developer, you guys don't want things to sit on the market, right? You want to unload it as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that you could put details into your job that you'd get a return on that, but it's just like us finding the correct customer. You need to find the correct buyer. I'm sure that if you went 110%, that house would sell, and it would sell for what you wanted it to, but you'd have to sit on it, which at that point is a risk for you.
Right.
I've made this reference before. McKim in Australia, who I'm convinced I'm going to get on this podcast. He's putting that product that I'm talking about. It's an insane level of detail. And he has this video on his website where it was the first development deal he was going to do, and the lot said that it had to be profitable, it had to be like 20 units, and he decided to build 8. And I have no idea if it was profitable, but now he's doing like 8 of them, and they're all this like insanely high quality, just incredible amount of detail, extremely modern, reglet detail, not polished concrete. What is that one with the speckle and the glass in it? Terrazzo floors. Like, it just, like, a next level. And I look at that, I'm like, there's got to be a market for that here.
But he could probably make more money doing something of a lower quality and higher volume.
Yeah, but for every one of those stories, Nick, there's probably 10 guys that are bankrupt right now because they couldn't pull it off.
Right. Well, that's what I'm getting at.
I think there is a market, but you have to hit that. The market is a very, very, very high end market. So you're not talking about, where if you
there's a huge gap, you're saying. Like,
and you have to be in a location that can support that.
Like if you're at like a $3,000 a foot sellout, then you can afford to spend a lot more money on your build. But when you're at a $250 a square foot or $500 a square foot sellout, you have to that margin gets destroyed, and you really have to you have to cater your build to your audience and who you're selling to.
So if we go back to our first project that Dan and I did, that's the exact challenge that we came up against, was that when we looked back on it and kind of did like a post-mortem, hopefully Johnny, you're okay with that term.
I like to use debrief, so we'll cut that out and do it again.
So when Dan and I debriefed on it, we said, we probably didn't have to do tile in the whole bathroom. We could have just done a surround tile, and we may not have had to do a floating vanity for this market. And that was
overbuilt. We overbuilt for the neighborhood, and we didn't. And the problem is we didn't get anything more for it.
Yeah.
Right.
But but you also didn't realize you were overbuilding it at the moment.
We did not.
Until you look back at it.
Correct.
You know what though? Finishes are only so much of the budget. I think we all collect, like, everyone has a tendency to focus a ton on that piece of it, but like a good developer kind of shapes the design as it's progressing to make sure that you're not making unnecessary costs in the structure, and you're looking at the facade, You're finding where there might be places where maybe that's a blind alleyway. Let's change and transition to a less expensive material there. Those are keys to success, I think, in development.
And I think you guys, we've talked about it in the past or even on your podcast, is the market funnel. That you don't want to have a funnel that's super tight at the bottom, that you're only appealing to like 2 people, Nick.
Yeah.
Like you're at the top 5%.
Right. This is why I think I'd be a terrible developer. Is that is it Wellesley or where they just built that $11 million home? It's like 11,000, and it was like featured. It's still for sale, right?
Yet they just dropped the price.
And it's to that caliber.
It is, and it's not selling.
Right. And I know that I'm ignoring market, which is why I'd be a bad.
But that's a
developer.
great example.
Well aware
of
of that, self-aware of that guy.
That's a perfect example.
But I know, and that's what I look at. I'm like, that's an amazing house, not selling. And
but here's the thing.
To your point, the funnel's too small.
No. The point is to someone that's smart enough to want that caliber of a product,
they'll build.
Why would you buy that product to also give money to an investor that did that? Mm-hmm. So if that was a $6 million build, construction cost, the land was, let's say, 1.5. Okay. Now you're tacking on the investment number that they want. Let's say they want $2 million for that. Why would you want to do that if you had the money to buy that? Why wouldn't you just go find land, find the builder, find the architect, put that pool together, and be done with it?
Well, that's exactly right. That's why we can't do projects in the South End anymore. It's so hard to make a brownstone in the Back Bay or South End work, because if we compete against an end user, we need to keep a 20% margin. They're happy if they have, they're a little bit ahead or even, and they have a house exactly to their specification. So I can't compete with an end user who wants to custom build their home.
And the spec builder who's doing something that high end and with those specific finishes, it's very hard to find an end buyer, because most likely the end buyer will want something custom anyway. So
for themselves,
right? And maybe the kitchen that's put in, they're like, oh well, I wish it was different color cabinets or different style cabinets.
For this price point, place
apart.
I want this.
Right.
Yep.
So, and I think so. To go back, Nick, to your earlier comment in terms of how we got to this discussion point, I think it was on one of the earlier episodes that you guys had. You said, I think you were frustrated that developers seem to cut corners, or the quality is just garbage, and it's like, it's kind of insulting to the industry.
That was a broad stroke right there, like a broad brush.
Not saying it. Yeah,
paraphrasing.
Definitely paraphrasing. But that was kind of the idea of it, is that like many developers, and trust us, we look at what other developers do, and we don't like it either. And
I'm fairly certain I know what you're referencing, and I say it because I say it a lot. And what I'm frustrated with is what I do get to see, the projects I do get to walk and do get to see, and then them selling for a ridiculous amount of money. John and Tyler, I shared a project that I walked just a week or two ago, and it was a spec build, custom home, extremely high price point.
Okay, I'm confused already. What? I know I'm not a technical guy, but it's a spec custom. Which is it?
Spec. It started as a spec. The client bought it midway through to customize it.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Thank you for clarifying.
Well, because it's like people always say the custom thing all the time, and it's like, but is it? Because everything's white.
It was an extremely high price point spec home, and I due to many circumstances, I'm not going to get into it today, but
just name them. Just name the builder.
Walking the job to possibly help fix it, and knowing what price point it was in, knowing the neighborhood it was in, knowing what it was selling, like everything, and seeing the level of quality and detail being so trash that frustrates me. And it's like what I see and yes, I'm bundling all the developers, and I shouldn't, just like you can't bundle anyone, but I'm looking at, I walk these deals all over the city. I live in the city. I get to see what's going up, and I'm like, that's trash. Like that's going to fail. And it's like this stuff, it doesn't matter to the end user, because the end user is going to still spend the $1 million bucks.
They don't know.
Right. They don't know. And I have a hard time believing that the guy building it doesn't know. And the guy building it is, I know, but I'm not going to do it because it'll sell. I can still sell it for $1 million bucks.
You operate at a different frequency and a different formula. you're pouring quality, effort, and time into stuff, people are doing a different formula where it's, hey, I know this works, and I don't know about you guys, but the mafia, the real estate agents, kind of dictate a lot of that, because it's like we did a bunch of stuff in our last spec home, and it was like, hey, we're going to add some color, do this stuff. No, we want all white. And then it's like every house in the market's white. So everything that you walk through in Wellesley is identical. So you're creating this flaw in the market because everything is identical, because as a realtor, you're dictating this for the developers that are out there doing it. And it's so frustrating.
I would just add that I definitely know that we're not trying to defend shitty developers. Let's just put it that way.
I agree.
We're definitely not on that in that boat. So
we feel this. I mean, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect,
Right.
but we feel the same way when we go and walk through a lot of other developers' stuff and look at other developers' work that we see, and again, going back to the price point, it's like if you're buying a $350,000 condo, I mean, I hate the term, and Johnny probably you get what you pay for, right? So it's like your expectation.
But Dan, to an extent, like there's still the problem I have is when it's belligerent, when it's like
I think that the problem you probably have, Nick, is when they're just taking more profit out of the job, being
rather than
greedy
just even hitting,
and
like,
not,
just not even
like
hitting
they're
code.
charging for it and they're not delivering. Like if they're charging for that and they're selling something and they're not delivering. I just walked a house for a customer that's a brand new house.
Yes.
And for us, it's an $800,000 house in a neighborhood that's not full of $800,000 houses, and they want to finish their basement, and the house is a dump. It shouldn't have cost that much money, but that developer basically charged a premium and didn't deliver a premium product. And I think that there's an issue there.
Tyler, I got to disagree a little bit, because the market dictates what the house or the property is worth. Like I hear a lot of guys saying like, oh, I can charge for this, or it's going to cost, at the end of the day, the house is only worth what someone is willing to pay, and also what a bank and an appraiser is willing to underwrite it for. So it's, that's one piece. And the other thing I was going to mention is just the thing that drives me nuts about bad development is when people make mistakes that don't cost any more money. So Dan and I kicked around a photo today of a developer who carried this soffit halfway across the room, clearly for a piece of ductwork. And it was super awkward. And it was like, A, carry it all the way, and B, why didn't you just drop it all the way over that one area? It was like a very defined space, like the kitchen. It just looked like a dick hanging out the ceiling. It was so strange. It's like that wouldn't have cost you $1 more if you just
What about
attention.
You don't think that a lot of the appraisals are based on lot size, how many bathrooms, and square footage? Because I think that this house would appraise for the same amount whether it was done well or was not done well.
I think we've been in a market where you could get away with that kind of crap for a long time. But I think that going forward, I think there's going to be a lot more that type of product will sit. It won't go
even before all this happened. There was starting to be a shift in the way buyers approached new construction developments, and I think over the last 5 years, people have gotten burned where they're buying pre-construction, they're walking through, and they're not seeing the finishes and they're not seeing the quality. And then when they go and move in and do their like walkthrough the day before they're supposed to close, they're like, holy shit, this place is a dump. What did I buy? And I think there was a lot of that. And you were starting to see a market shift before all this went on, where people want to see a finished product before they're willing to pull the trigger on something. And I'm hoping that's the case, actually, because I think it will flush out a lot of the garbage.
But yeah, pre-sales have.
I think that they should.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-sales have, as Dan said, proven that the market is not willing to bear what you guys are saying here. And also, if we put something under agreement when we're selling it, now what you're going to see in the purchase and sale is, at least with us, a full spec list, and it's a pretty detailed spec list. You're getting this set of appliance packages, you're getting this model number, and we've certainly heard people that they're promised like a Gen Air and then they're getting like a Bosch or something like that. Everything's like a step down. Oh, I sold it. Money's in the bank. Now I just cut corners and finish the job.
Yeah, the bait and switch.
Right. And that frustrates us because like Dan spends a lot of time picking out finishes. And I mean, one of the projects we just did, he did this beautiful, like $15,000 mahogany garage door, which I don't know if that made us any more money or not. But I mean, we've gotten numerous compliments on it, and that's rewarding. So I don't know. Is it one of those things where you do the work and you build this reputation so that you then have the reputation that you can sell and charge a premium for? Maybe that's the way to play it.
Why does it frustrate you, Nick, so much? Is it because people are just getting taken advantage of, or is it because people are making a higher profit per project than you? No, I don't give a shit about No, not at all. It has nothing to do with the money. We keep talking about finishes, and let's go back to Mark. Like, forget the finishes. I'm thinking of a project that you guys probably all know. It's like even the envelope is flawed. And there's one down around the corner from me that was completed less than a year ago. Half the siding's removed, and there's clearly leaks across the entire building. And it's like, this is stuff that they, in the construction of it, it's like someone knew that they weren't doing something right. Like, this isn't something that was like, oh, this should work. It was like blatantly just not done correctly because the money
think
wasn't.
Or do you think that the guys that were hired to do it?
There's one project that I 100% believe that.
I feel like a lot of it is the budget that people use give you less skilled people, and they're literally doing an A, B to C task, and it doesn't matter. They don't know any better if it's right or wrong.
I don't know. I mean,
or they're spread too thin, John.
Well, here's the other thing. Going back to your point, John. Going back to your point at the beginning, Johnny, where you said everyone thinks they're a developer. The problem is Mark, Ray, and I, we sub our own stuff out. We GC stuff ourselves, but the majority of a developer, they're hiring a GC to run the job for them. They don't really know, and that's, I think, one of the biggest problems out there is they're going out, they're getting bids from 3 or 4 GCs. They're probably taking the lowest one, and they're getting garbage work out of it.
Because they got to make it up somewhere.
They got to make it up somewhere.
And you know what adds to my frustration is that this stuff just isn't going to last. Like, it's just not going. It's not. It doesn't have a long life expectancy.
But the other side of this is, I mean, Nick, I'm with you 100%. We've argued this point. People have told me to shut up in comments. I get it. It's just the other hard part is, Nick, if you were to build something and create that kind of benchmark for the product and the price point, you'll watch how mediocre builders then will actually raise their price because you've upped the ante, and they get rewarded for the same crappy product. That's probably the most frustrating thing, is that in Wellesley,
where you would think that if like someone's building something better, everyone's like, oh, I can build better. Like, that's what we've done.
Or the market would see the product and be like, I see the difference.
Right. And I mean, it would have, like, I don't know. I still fully believe that.
I don't know if that's true.
I think that it is, again, not a developer. I think that there's a market for that high end development, and it's just about educating the client, and that's the hardest part, is educating the client to a point where they understand when they walk between 2 buildings what the difference is.
Why wouldn't they just hire you to do it at that level? I'm not disagreeing with you
because the same reason the guy over in the Seaport rents his apartment for $17,000 a month, because he doesn't want to deal with it. There's people.
There's a lot of guys who buy the finished old trucks, John instead of buying somebody and then having somebody build it.
I think you can manipulate, you can control the market in that way, though. It's a big market, and you might have set a comp on a block that may have somehow incrementally moved it, but I think what you're probably seeing is just a market that's appreciated 6 to 10% year over year. So someone finished a beautiful house, and then the next shit house down the block sold for a ton of money. Those two things happen, but they might not have been correlated.
I mean, I'm taking my I totally hear
causation. Just for it.
I've watched 2 developers. I built 30 houses in Wellesley. I watched 2 developers buy in the same neighborhood, and then be able to comp their houses higher because of what ours were comping at. And then it's happening right now again. So they would get, we would sell something at $2 million. They would sell at 1.7. You know, they're able to get it up a little bit higher because people will then look at that and go, I need to save $200,000. So they end up getting $100,000 more because of that. You might know the market better than me, but I know that it happened with.
You might be right. In fact, maybe that's just such a small market where like it's a small town and a small couple very desirable blocks, and there aren't many sales to comp off of. So that
there's not much of a choice. And then that guy, people saw through it, and you can see these people that they, Nick, to your point, they would buy these houses, and I'd watch them go up for resale in a year and a half, because you would find that they would have to market to certain people. Maybe it was out-of-staters, transplants. They weren't like, we get a lot of clients in Wellesley that are people that are upgrading from a house that's too small. They want to stay in that neighborhood. We happen to buy a property in that neighborhood. They go, we want to buy that. We don't get someone coming from, but from Boston that doesn't really know the market. It's people that see us, but the other guys that are getting right below us for market value are getting transplants. And then a year from now, they sell it because the comfort's not there. The creaks, all the stuff that shouldn't be in a new home is seen. But I see people buy houses that are junk with Maseratis out front, and I don't see the correlation.
It's the same thing. I feel like comps are the same thing as appraisals. They're not going through that and looking at what's your window package, what type of roofing do you have, what's your hot water heater, what's your HVAC system, is it sized for when you finish the basement that you can tap into it? They don't. They're just looking at lot size, square footage, how many bathrooms do you have, it has a new kitchen. They're not looking at those little things to create those comps.
Well, the buyers they're not educated, right?
No, exactly.
They don't know all of those details.
So it's the same thing, John. John, even for your spec market, you always mentioned that you don't think your quality is where it needs to be, but you're overbuilding your houses for your market. You could build to a lower quality and sell for the same amount.
Agreed. I just don't know how to do it on a personal level.
That's why none of us. That's why we don't. That's why I don't do it. I don't.
But don't you think that's why we're educating these our end users is behind our process, behind what is, valuable, what is craftsmanship? Don't you think it's why we're doing what we're doing?
It's to kind of push ourselves, but at the same time, I know that my customers, I could not hit the level of detail that I do, and I'd still get paid, and they'd still be happy. So like part of that is just me wanting to continue to push myself. And the customers are they're not paying me for the extra time that I sold them a product. They don't know what that end product actually looks like. It's my own personality at that point that's driving me to hit the details that I want to hit and get to the level of execution that I want to. They'd still pay me and they'd still be happy regardless. That's the choice that I make.
I mean, there's different formulas. I know there's a guy that develops, good kid. He was with that other builder that took advantage of our basically market that we created. I mean, we were basically selling our own. We were making our own comps.
Yeah.
Everything. My old boss sold off market, so literally they'd have to pull comps off of only our builds. And this guy was able to do the same thing. And now his market that he has, he's switched to another developer, and he makes $40,000 off each build. He runs 6 to 8 builds at a time. And it makes him good money, but there is nothing except for speed that is part of that calculation when it comes to quality time and basically overall budget. It's basically budget and speed, and that's it. And they have to hammer him out, and it's closings. I see him all the time, and he's just like, I can't tell you I'm going to make this closing, but I have to make it. Yeah, he needs that $40,000, and that's it. And that is how a lot of the market is out here.
Those guys are going to go away. Because in a rising tide that works, but in our current environment, you are going to be left. You're going to lose
those margins are razor thin.
Yeah.
He's getting a fee. He's just the guy on the ground. So his effort is speed and moving. Wow. There's a whole nother guy that's basically buying the land. Yeah. So he's
the developer making.
No. And it's a system that works. And one guy's a real estate guy. He acquires all the properties, and then he just has this. People coming from Boston that just don't know. They're coming out of they want the burbs. And they just don't know any better until they get into it. I had one client, I talked about this on a previous podcast. The client called me and was like, hey, can you walk this build? We really don't know what quality is. and they looked at it, and I was like, I hate to tell you this. You could tell the wife like loved the house. And I'm like, this is junk. Absolute junk. And the only way I could put it to them is that when you guys move into this house that you buy for $3.6 million and you go and have wine next door, you will see a real $3.6 million house at drinking wine in their house. And you'll have to do the walk of shame back to your house that night and go, what the hell did we buy? And they didn't buy that house, thank God. And they bought something else, which is great that we renovated. But it's like, they really don't know. And people are taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I would almost argue that in your roles as builders, you almost have more of an advantage because you're that step. You're that if we talk about Mark's capital stack, like you're the second tier down, right? So we have to pay somebody like yourselves, and then we have to have enough money or meat on the bone, as we say, to ourselves get paid. But if you guys are doing your own development projects, the buck stops with you guys. And yeah, you want to do them and make the projects really, really high end and nice, but you might be able to take some of that money that normally would go to like a Dan and myself or a Mark, and you could throw it in towards like a higher end finished package. So I wouldn't discount the fact that you couldn't develop on your own if you wanted to do spec, but I think you just wouldn't be able to do everything perfectly.
Yeah, I think I would battle with that. One question I have is, do you guys see your market coming in more educated? Like, are they asking more questions and basically contradicting what John just said is that they don't know, but in your world and because you guys showcase what you guys do and try to talk about it, is that education being reciprocated with the end user?
It depends on the product. I would say if, I don't want to discount first-time home buyers, but if you're a first-time home buyer, you've never seen a house before, so everything's shiny and new and you miss a lot of things. But if it's your second home or your third home and you've moved a few times, I would say that those are, and it's a higher end price point, I think you're finding buyers that are a little more detailed, but sometimes they're not. It all depends on the agent that represents them. It all depends on if they have a home inspection, how good the home inspector is.
Price point.
And the price point does make a difference because a first-time home buyer is typically not buying $1 million+ house.
Yeah, but I'll give you two examples. Realtors have gotten better in the city of Boston. One thing we're getting asked for all the time is reflected ceiling plans because people are tired of moving into their house and having no lights in their bedroom. And it's the maybe sound attenuation. In a in some of these luxury buildings, be amazed. But
luxury buildings with no lighting.
Switched outlets. It's very typical in a high-rise application where you have a concrete deck above you and you already might have tight floor to ceilings. They just make a decision and go, yeah, you've switched. You're going to put lamps all over this room. I'm not advocating that. I trust me, but that's one. And two is just very clear specs and maybe sound attenuation details. Tell me how your floor to ceiling, your horizontal separation is going to work. And that's a function of realtors, I think, helping their clients and doing a good job.
I don't know. I think the realtor thing, it's good to hear that they're getting better, because I feel like a lot of times in my experience they haven't asked those right questions, and not in my buying, not personally, but just knowing people that have went through it and ended up with a product that they hated. And them asking for my opinion and saying, hey, what are your thoughts on this? It's like, well, didn't you consider the fact that it was a switched outlet and not a light? It's like, no, there was no furniture in here, so I didn't even think of it.
I just feel like it's our society. So many people want to give as little as they can and make as much as they can. It's what you can make the most amount of money and give the least amount of effort. I even know when realtors go to sell house, they don't want to sit on a house, and they're going to try and convince you that you should sell your house at a certain price point so that they can unload it and they can get a commission, they can move on to the next one. And I think that you have to find a good realtor, you have to find a good developer, you have to find a good contractor. Whose music is that?
That's coming. Yeah. That's from down the street. That's coming down Dorchester Street in South Bay.
That was a good beat.
Dot Ave.
I think it's the same thing with realtors. You're going to find some realtors who want to sell a higher quality home or want to sell a product that they can believe in. But I think for the vast majority is that realtors want to get stuff on the market that's going to sell quickly.
Oh yeah, they definitely. I think there's a Freakonomics episode, podcast episode that talks about that. If they squeeze an extra 10,000 out at 5%, they're making an extra $500, and if they have to spend 5 more weekends doing open houses, like it's working for free, they're not going to do it. I 100% agree.
Exactly. And I think that it's tough, and I think that at that point, educating your customers may cost you a lot of money as a realtor.
It's an interesting thought.
They don't want to lose a deal either. Yeah, if they have a buyer like, oh man, you love this house, but here's 12 things that are wrong with it. Let's go look at 5 more. Yeah, I agree.
I think a good realtor would respond that their business is all referral, and that it's a very competitive industry with low barriers to entry, and that they roll up their sleeves and fight for their clients fiercely.
If you find a good realtor.
Yeah, I'm not making a judgment one way or the other.
I've seen realtors also be the developers in Wellesley.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's a mafia. I don't know if it's 100% necessary either. I feel like I would rather just. The problem is like you can't just put it on Zillow because then they'll see that you did that and then they won't show your house to the market. So it's like this. I'm 100% on with the mafia.
Dude, it is 22 Liberty's incredible building in the Seaport, broke all kinds of price per square foot records, and the developer decided to not entertain any co-brokes. In other words, if a realtor showed up with Dan, who was his realtor, his agent, they said, "Glad you're here for the showing. You're not going to get paid." And they sold out the whole building. And there's a lot of talk about whether this developer's next building was getting any attention or showings, or what the long-term implications are. It's a little bit like organized crime.
Wow. It totally is. It's crazy.
I wonder, could money aside, right? Like, say you had a steady income regardless of what you sold this stuff for. Do you think you would build the same way, or would you exhaust more of the budget? Because I think that's where I'm at, where it's like I would almost in that episode, Ray, that you mentioned that I talk about all developers are crap, blah blah blah, but I think I also made the reference that I would almost want to just put our product on the market and break totally even as a passion project just to show the market, like, hey, this can exist, and sell it at the same exact price point as the guy next door that's building a shit box. And, I get it. There's risk there. Like, I get that no investor's going to back that. John, I don't know why your head's down, but...
Because I'm doing it. We've talked about this.
Yeah, and it's like, why not? Like, what is stopping, and I'm saying you guys, but just anyone, like, what's stopping you from exhausting every dollar and putting something on the market that doesn't exist to try to educate the client that, hey, listen, I know that you have 15 different options in this neighborhood. Come walk mine. I'll show you the difference. I'll sell it to you for the same price point, and then you do that the second one, and then it's like now you start creeping up, and now you start making money, basically starting over right back to square one.
I would say is being the guy doing all of the numbers and everything for our end of the business is I've seen our finished budget go up, and I don't know if that's a function of every one of our projects has gone into sort of a higher end state and a higher end price point, but I've seen the numbers go up, and I don't feel like we cut back. When we're putting the budget together, Dan and I go through with the line items and we say, this is what we're going to spend and this is what we have to present to the bank, because they're only going to reimburse us for what we tell them at the start. We have to make up the gap if we overspend. There's that backfilling that has to happen. So I can't remember the last time we've had a project where cost per foot went down or we spent less on certain finished materials. We seem to keep setting our own internal bars higher. Is it perfect? No. Could it be perfect? Yes. Would it be worth it to be perfect? That's a very interesting question. And
I think that comes down to like personal. Like, right. It's not going to be a spreadsheet or a number or a market distinction. It's going to be a personal thing, and that's
I mean,
where
you prefaced that entire idea by saying money aside.
Right.
So that's what's stopping everyone.
I would say that would be the difference between running a business and doing something as a hobby.
right.
Nick, am I understanding your question right? You're saying put a product out there that blows everyone else away, create a brand for yourself and a name for yourself, and then your subsequent builds, you could actually capture that premium because buyers would know. And I think that is appealing, but my concern would be that the market's too big and that you're nobody in Boston. There are so many thousands.
I thoroughly believe that I've done that as a builder.
To do it, I think you could maybe do it if you were. I've told you that before.
But even at, like before all of this, like when I started as a carpenter and then a remodeling company, and then we grew into a team, like I did that. Like every project I did, I would take the money that I should have made and invest it right back into the company, whether that was spending $15,000 on extra on a staircase that I wasn't going to get reimbursed for, or whatever it was. I just kept putting something better and better and better and better because I was trying to market to a client that would eventually pay for it.
I think the problem is that buyers are not cash buyers, and they're at the mercy of what the banks will lend to buy. And maybe to Tyler's point, an appraiser is going to come in and be like, that staircase is incredible, but I can't like justify appraising this at a higher value than the similar square foot product down the street, and so it just won't comp out, and then your buyer won't get a mortgage.
I think that's where the gap is. Sorry, John. I think that's where the gap is that we're talking about you're in this market of people, and in order to you have to jump this whole group of people that can get financed, but you need to jump right to the people that are going to hand over $3 million cash for a product.
Yeah, but then that
funnel becomes thinner, right?
Exactly.
But the other part is, Nick, look at that $11 million house in Wellesley that was built as a custom. But I don't even know if that'll appraise. There's one comp around the corner that was a custom home that's a completely different look that Ken Vonna did, and I just don't know how that will comp out, like appraise.
Well, someone that's buying $11 million home is going to come in with a boatload of cash.
No, but
it doesn't appraise.
Yeah, exactly. If it doesn't appraise, I just don't know if an appraiser or anyone would see that value there. I don't think they'd know. Like the hardest thing.
It might be easier for an appraiser to assign that value if there's so few comps like it. They might say, "Well, this is unique," or they may just come in $2 million below. Who knows?
I also feel like at that point they don't. If you're spending that much money on a house, they don't care if it's going to appraise or not. They're going to pay for that.
Yeah, but not when you're. A lot of people look at Zillow, and if you look at that house and you look at the neighboring houses around it, they're $2-3 million, like almost all of them.
Right? Do you want to be the?
That's
guy
a
that owns
huge
an $11
jump.
million house?
Yeah, but if you have enough money to buy, I think a lot of people who I think the reason that house is probably sitting there's a lot of reasons, but I think one of the bigger ones is once you're into that price point, somebody wants everything that they want in a house for $11 million. And at that point, they're willing to say, who cares what everything is comping around us? This is where we want to be. This is the house we want. This is the money that we have. Who cares about appraisal? We don't care about resale. I just think that market, Nick, when we're selling to a customer that we already have locked in, that hired us for what we're doing.
They believe in you.
When you're developing, even with the spec, when you start that whole process and there's investors involved, you're not selling to somebody who wants that, and like maybe that person is out there, and then essentially you're doing what we're doing and you're a custom builder at that point.
If the people that developed that, they bought it, they probably don't have a note on the land. So, but if you were a developer on that lot that they have for $11 million, every month that thing comes up for a payment, that's a whack you take. That the odds of it. I mean, that's been sitting for 4 months now or longer.
See, I think the super high end stuff is fun to talk about, and I know it's a world that you guys play in a lot. But I'm almost more interested in how do you develop a product. I hate to call this entry level, but $550,000 to $600,000 condo in Boston, and make it really special. And you can't put you can't go nuts on that. You'll lose money quickly. But like small things, take an ordinary tile and put it in a really interesting format. Vary things up, design.
It's Mark. It's interesting because like that is, I'm equally as interested in that side of it as I am the super high end, because I think it's Benjamin. I always forget how to pronounce his last name.
Button.
No, Unida.
Ueda.
Yeah.
And he's going to be on in a few weeks, but I want to talk because he talks about it a lot, and I think if I read correctly, is that's why he left architecture, is because he was sick of the fact that, and I'm paraphrasing, but that it was always affluent people that got to work with him. He wanted to bring to the market a product that anyone could have. And that's now you're seeing him use like Ryobi tools and making a plywood desk that is cool and modern. And I agree, like I do also think of that side of it where it's like, how do we build something the very best that we can for a lower price point for, to be more obtainable. And, Benson Wood has talked about it. He built their prefabricated homes, and he wanted to appeal to any price point and still give a product that was the utmost quality. And he did that by automation.
We had Ben on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I think what he's going to tell you is it's all labor. How do you use cool materials that maybe don't break the bank, that are special, and be able to do the same thing with half of the man hours?
Right.
I mean, I feel like even with what we do, Nick, so I forget which one of you said it. So many people put so much emphasis on finishes. And I don't think that finishes account for that much of the project when you look at the labor costs involved.
They don't.
So like in order to cut the cost of a house down or a build down or a development, you have to somehow reduce that labor. The finishes, reducing the cost in finishes is easy. Pick something that looks the same, that's less expensive. I think cutting those labor costs, my jobs that I do, it's primarily labor. Whether they pick subway tile or marble isn't changing the contract price of that job that much in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's figuring out how to reduce that labor, because it's such a heavy cost in any of our projects.
And I think that's what Mark was just saying, and same thing with Benson Wood. It's like they created automation. That's why I'm so interested in panelization and pre-planning and doing a lot of this stuff in preparation. I feel like we waste a lot of time, figuring stuff out on the fly.
Putting out fires.
The input costs are huge. I think no one appreciates that either. You walk into I was just disparaging some high-end product that has no recessed lights downtown, right? Like that's easy to do. But I think what you don't figure is that product is $500 plus per square foot to build. That the acquisition costs were obscene, and so that's what happens at the end. It isn't always. I think people like to castigate a cheap developer, but oftentimes they don't know, how many costs come at holding costs, carrying. You could go on.
Yeah, it's just a world that, like I said, I've had little experience with, and all of these things. I think the big picture here is how to reduce the time spent on the process. And I'm excited that you said that, Mark, is that he's going to talk a lot about labor, because that, and Tyler too, it's like, it's all the amount of time that we're putting into this, and it's understanding, are we actually using our time efficiently?
Yeah, it's also how many people are involved. Like you guys said that you're GCing your own projects, so you probably are afforded a certain amount of money to upgrade things and create a better product.
Yep.
I think with so many developers, the business side of things is there's so many mouths to feed at that point, and there's so many hands in that pot that there's not that much room left for everyone. I think that if it were one investor, at that point you're paying less people, you're putting more of your own labor and sweat equity into it, but you're then afforded to be able to put higher quality finishes in. And I think that there's just so much business around developers and partnerships, that there's so many people that need to get paid or else it's not worth it, that the costs are driving up because of that.
Nick and John, I think you guys would love, well, I know Nick, Johnny's done a bunch of development anyway, but to me, building for yourself, if I were to make a spreadsheet and say like things I love about building and things that I hate, being the developer, it cuts out all the things that I used to bother me, decisions that would take 4 days, approval chains. It's just like, oh, that's out of stock. Well, I like that one. Go. And it lets you just move.
Right. So going back to customers and helping nudge them along in the process, when we mentioned earlier that there was a new build /spec, a spec /custom, Dan and I ended up going through something like that. We were building something spec, and then a buyer came along partway through framing, and that really slowed us down. That adding months to the project because they couldn't make decisions. And then, we didn't catch certain things like the specific toilet that they picked, along with a pedestal sink, conflicted with the widths. So they ended up hitting each other. Just small things like that slowed the whole process down. So I agree there, Mark. Somebody
else said that we had on, that they would rather just stick to their specs, without a buyer, than dealing with somebody coming on and wanting to upgrade finishes mid-project.
But I think what we learned from that was, if we were going to do it again, we didn't have a system in place. So it comes down to your systems. And I know, Nick, you're using Builder Trend still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. We don't use it in the same way that I'm sure you guys use it to help with the customer decision process and keeping them informed. But if you have a system set up, you should be able to make that not as stressful and know when to ask them and set deadlines and things like that.
You can't charge for that either. I heard you guys say on a previous pod how like sometimes you want to, or it wasn't you, it was one of your guests, capture the buyer and then make money with like changes and having them make upgrades. I hate charging. Charging buyers for upgrades never seems to work well for me. For us, it's just like
I don't recall that, but what I did want to say is that, call me crazy, I actually really like working with a client.
Mm-hmm.
And like
you're crazy.
And but there's a big part of it where it's like I'm thinking of the projects that we have going on right now, and seeing them come in and seeing it develop and seeing what their like vision is, and we're putting it on paper and in renderings and whatever else, and then it's unfolding on site. That's super gratifying for me. That's probably,
it's the whole point.
You're absolutely. What's that?
It's the whole point, is to take someone's vision and create it into reality. And how do you do both and do the, having it modularly done and have all the selections done ahead of time? That's why I'm being quiet, because I don't understand this. I don't know how you get all those things that everyone says is the ambiance of the construction and streamline it. It only comes with experience.
Right.
You guys messed up that first build by having a client. It wouldn't have mattered if you penalized it and you saved time in the beginning of it, because you would have lost it. You would have lost your shirt no matter what, because you don't know how to deal with a client. And vice versa. Everyone's going to have their strengths and weaknesses across the board on this process until you get it down. And then the next client that might be batshit crazy comes along and screws it all up again. Who knows? But I love putting out that fire and that taking on that challenge and dealing with that whole situation, because that's what makes it what we do. Like my guy said it today, we're digging a hole in Carlisle. He goes, if it was easy, everyone would do it. I 100% agree with you. That's what makes the good people good and the other people average. And Nick, I will take a buyer every single day of the week. That's why our stuff pre-sells, even when most of the market right now, like you guys said, no one has vision and they don't want the bait and switch. So they want to wait till it's pretty much painted, tile, everything. And they're willing to take the regret or deal with certain tile because it's done. And so you got to market to certain people. But yeah, I mean, and we do change orders and we do upgrades because it is a custom build, and trying to keep it on the same time frame, it's really tough to do, because now you have the investors barking at you and you have clients barking at you. And it's like all these, and then the realtor goes in and goes, when do I get my commission? And it's like, shut up. And then you have like all these different things that are kind of manipulating the situation that don't need to be there. And it's a lot of noise. So think I know what I want to be doing and I don't think it has anything to do with investors going forward.
What do you want to be doing?
I already talked to you about it. I think you need to go. I think you need to go to the end user. I think we need to paint a better picture for people, and I feel like renderings and all that stuff is now so much better and so much cleaner and much detail where people can see the image of it, and you have the ability to pre-sell it that way. I just think acquiring land, like I don't have, what'd you call it? What'd you call that money stack of Monopoly money?
Capital stack.
Capital stack. I don't have that, so I'm trying to do it a different way where I find land that I love and I call it a passion project, and I create a design around that land, bring in the interior designers, they're all on board, the architecture's on board. Basically, we will give you a package with a budget, with a time frame on a lot of land that we see as kind of this vision for this land, and try and get that high-end end user, Nick, that if we did it all, it'd be $5 to $6 million. If an investor had to be involved, for them to put out $3 million plus the land, they'd have to get a return back of like $2.5 million.
Well, here's a question. Why are you using an investor? Why can't you go to a bank?
I'm not doing it all. I'm acquiring the land and then going right to the end user, so then they purchase it. And then they sign a contract with us for construction, and now there's no development, there's no bank involved unless it's on their end. Vision. Yes. That's what we do anyways.
Right, and I think, you spoke about renderings and going back to McKim selling the 8 units over the 20 that he was recommended. It was all a rendering. He rendered the whole home. It was the rendering the building in the neighborhood, the kitchen space, the spaces that mattered. You go on that website, it looks like the building's done, and it's like he pre-sold it, and then when he pre-sold it, then they built it. And they're doing one right now. They're building one right now. Is the same thing. They were $2-3 million condos in these. Good. Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say they're just like, and I don't know anything about Australian real estate. Like it's in Melbourne.
It's gotta be fireproof.
But it's and termite proof, I think. But I've talked to a handful of guys down there, and it seems pretty similar to what we're seeing in Boston. But it's like you're looking at a building with 8 units in it that are $2 to $3 million.
You know who did an awesome job of that, like, I don't know, a decade ago? It wasn't $3 million projects. You guys might know it. Forbes Loft out there in Chelsea.
That's one we talked about, right?
Yeah. I didn't know if the real estate guys knew about it. But yeah, there was an old building that they had like a 5-phase right on the water, right? The harbor there. And they developed it, and he had 80 units pre-sold before they even finished it. Turns out he never finished it. So it was like totally sold. It was unbelievable. And they had they have like a windmill on the property. It was basically net zero.
Isn't it still there?
It's still there. And the problem is, like, the first time they took money, it was through a bank. It was crazy. I called the guy one day, pulled the jacket, and like literally the building's 90% complete, but there's no way to get to it. The bridge to get out there wasn't, like, he was so ass backwards on how he developed it. The windmill was there, and basically it had lights. It was on Green Planet way back in the day with Steve, the old host from this old house, and it would basically show you any given day there was a light in your room that said, hey, if it was green, you had power from the solar, from the windmill, so you had free power. And if it was yellow, it was basically a cloudy day. Or if it was red, you didn't have any free power. So it would teach you when to do like your laundry and stuff like that. It was kind of insane, but they had marketed it across the board. The website's now down. I think I tried to send it to Nick, but it was unbelievable. It's just the problem was they didn't know how to run their numbers, but they marketed it very well. Unbelievable. So there was
as of a year ago, it might be back up.
It's not. They took money the first time around. They took money from a bank. Second time around, they took money from the unions of Rhode Island. So the union want to get paid first. So it makes the job undoable if you're going to pay all that debt back. They would have to forgive the debt, which the union's not going to do. Forget it. We're going down a tangent. Rabbit hole. Next subject.
Yes, it's in Chelsea, Mark. It's Forbes. It's called Forbes Loft.
Why do people always say rabbit hole? Like you're not actually going down a rabbit hole.
I hate rabbit holes.
You can't. It's pretty difficult to do a condo product if it's going to be less than 400 a foot on the sellout, or 450 even.
This is like 15 years ago.
I know that's.
It was unbelievable. It was such a cool, but it's right next to a projects. It has a train line that runs right through it. It was, check it out. If anything could come back to life, that'd be a really cool one.
I'll give you a piece of it.
No, I want to build it, dude. I don't want a piece. I want to make the passion.
There's a bunch of renderings.
Is it still up? Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I've fallen in love with that, and I would like to recreate that. But guys, one of the things we didn't talk about, we talked about when you guys made money and, you know, how you lost your shirt in the beginning. When, at what point, how long have you guys been doing it for?
10 years for us.
10 years. So when did you start to, at what point, not the money part, but were you proud of your product? Like, I'm sure the first one you may have been proud of because it was pride, but like, when did you had enough knowledge and the budget to create a product that you could stand behind, that you were like, you know what, this is it. I've worked out my kinks. This is my jam.
I still think we're working out our kinks. I'm proud of the stuff we do, but I think we're always learning. Every project is different. You know, we're learning. We're still refining processes. We'll never be not learning. I mean, that's my.
You know, I definitely respected the process. I did 3 rentals back to back to back, and I moved into each and every one of them. And there's something to be said for tasting your own cooking. You know, you see a lot of your own mistakes, and after doing those, that's when I start to do condo product. And that's, like Dan said, I'm not perfect either, but that was a good way. I moved 5 times in 7 years.
I'll tell you, I felt a sense of pride. I couldn't tell you if there was an exact moment, but we got a sense of pride when Dan gets messages on Instagram like, hey, we love it. Buyers come in, they say they love it. But I would say most importantly is when you have something that you sell and there's no callbacks, there's no warranty issues. Nothing pisses me off more than, not pisses me off, but it makes me sad that, you know, something that we did wasn't done perfectly. And we had one project where that didn't happen a couple years ago. And then we've had some other projects where maybe like 1 out of the 3 buyers in a 3-family would call us. So it's hard. I would say, you know, I think I would say within the past 3 years, Dan, I don't know. I feel like we've stepped up our game. We've gone kind of balls to the walls with the finishes. We used to say, oh, we'll figure this stuff out later down the line. Now we think about it right from the get-go. You know, you're framing and you're thinking about the finish. So
now you're talking my language.
Yeah. So I think that's when we, you know, and when it comes out the way that the plans show it coming out as is when I feel
So is that just experience, you believe?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I bet 5 years from now I'll be like, you know, it was nice, but you know, look at all these things that we've learned now.
It's crazy. And like, it is, the more that you do any of this stuff, the more you know what to look out for, what to do, what not to do, pinch points, all of that stuff. I feel like with what you guys do, it's going to get more and more difficult because I think that you'll start noticing things that you want to implement that take more time that you're not necessarily getting paid for.
Marty, it's already starting.
Which is the tough thing, you know, where it's like, well, we could do this better. Are we getting a return on that? Because you just constantly learn and evolve, and you could potentially be eating into a lot of your profit.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes.
I know. I want to go back to like not knowing anything and just doing crappy work. Just be like, oh yeah, we got that bathroom done in a week and a half. The more I know, the more my head spins.
I mean, that's where we live in now. All we do, I'm sure we can all attest to it, is that we scroll and see what other people are building and developing and, you know, whatever. And I look at it, I'm like, I want to do that. You know, I feel like everyone looks at that. And that's what I meant by, you know, hoping to put a better product on the market than someone else sees it and then says, oh, I want to do that. And probably that's my, you know, that's probably my ignorance there, is that thinking that the majority of people would want to learn from it, not take advantage of it for a shittier product to make more money. But yeah,
I don't know, Dan. When did you feel proud. You feel. I mean, you like your work, right?
You're talking to me?
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't say anything.
Yes, I did. I said something. You weren't listening.
You didn't say it enough.
I think he meant to say. I think he meant to say Ray too.
Do you guys feel as though you're building what you want to be building, or like Mark, do you want to eventually be building 50 unit buildings?
That's a really good question. I don't know. You lose so much control on those.
You also lose a job.
Yeah, it's true.
In your situation.
No, but right, like the big money, more money, more problems. Sometimes, there's something to be said for being in a place where you're comfortable and you're doing the work. I'm sure that you kind of will get to a complacency or a level where you want the next step and the next challenge. But when the changes come at you on a 50-unit building, they come hard and quick, and It isn't just like fixing one window. It's like,
I'll tell you,
I do battle with that question.
I'll tell you what my end goal is to be in a place from a passive income standpoint with the rentals that we have and continuing to build that portfolio where I have enough money coming in where I can pick and choose which projects I want to do. So if I only want to do one 20-unit building a year, and it can be a kick-ass project, and I can cherry pick. And if I do one that year, I do one. And if I don't do one, I don't do one. But at least I can pick and choose which ones I want to do because of that. And that's kind of my goal is, then to your point, Johnny, it can be like a passion project, or to your point, Nick. And, and you can do it right. And, if you don't make a shit ton of money on it, okay, I still have all this other income coming in, so like, that's kind of my vision.
Yeah, I feel like if you were to work that way, you're taking a lot of the heat and the stress off of yourself if you have an alternative or a supplemental income at that point, and then you can slow down enough to enjoy the process.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, we've talked about it too. It's like we've all talked about it. It's like, can we just find a way to have a steady income and then just build passion projects? Because like we all went into this, at least I'm speaking for the three of us, and I think similar to you guys is like we went in this because we enjoy building and we like building homes and doing this, and for it to be this constant reminder of, hey, this is your source of income. You need to make XYZ as sacrifices in order to maintain that, and being able to build something, Mark, to your point, where there is no sacrifice, where the client's like, hey, do whatever you want. I got plenty of money. I want the best thing ever. Like, yeah, that would be amazing. And, in probably a lot of ways, like some of the projects that we're doing probably look that way because we're poor. Like we're a lot of times we're over investing, or we are able to overbuild, most now more so than before, clients are on board with that. Before, it was very much driven by us in order for us to do something better for the portfolio. But to work for clientele that just says, listen, I don't care how much it costs, I want the best thing ever, like, and having that quote unquote passion kind of project, and having the and having income not be an issue, that, right, to Dan, to your point, like that's ultimate.
You guys want to be landlords ever?
Nope.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind it.
Well, I don't know. I answered
even
that
if you had a property manager. So you didn't have to actively manage it.
If I have a concierge and maintenance program for my company, it'll kind of be built into itself. So it won't be like it's another longer tail to kind of manage. It'll be something that I can have kind of overlap. So if someone calls for a water heater, it's not like it's having to create a whole new system. It just goes into that bank, is my vision. I think the whole overall thought process we all just talked about, it comes in time. We're all young here. Yeah. Like everyone that I've met that have been developing for a long time or in the business, it's their late 60s that their company's still running, and then they're over here spending a little bit of their retirement and letting it work for itself on a passion project that at that level, the quality, they do what they want, because it's like when you get old, you get to say whatever you want and no one take offense to it. These guys have just done what they wanted and it fits in. and they've been able to make huge relationships in the market where then these properties that may not have been coming to the market beforehand come to them offline because the word of mouth has gotten out that you want to try and do this project. There's no timeline on it. And they go, hey, how about this property in the center of town, old historic home? People know you in town because you've been there for decades. Historic department gives you a little bit more leeway. I just think it comes in time. If you want to go through this and want everything right now, like Tyler says, you're going to do everything at 40%. That's the hardest part of this whole thing is taking a little bit of time, having systems in place to be able to give you enough time to really devote to that. Having a family, it's bonkers. Like, to try and do what we're doing right now and to make it all work. I'm just happy with the success that I have and my team has.
Here's a question for you guys. You guys
Sorry,
get frustrated.
it's our podcast. Sorry, no, we'll do it.
You guys get frustrated with other builders and developers and stuff. Do you ever get frustrated within your own trades and you see someone that charged a couple $200,000 to do their kitchen, then you walk through it and it's trash? Do you get frustrated on that too, right? So it's,
of course,
yeah,
daily.
Yeah.
Especially now when all the markets kind of changed, not actually recently, but for the longest time, you'd have the same subs you've had for a long time, and now they're changing their pricing, but their quality is not improving. And it's really, really tough to approach these guys that you've had relationships with and go, hey, why am I paying more money? And to have that conversation with someone face to face and go, the quality has not changed. It's the same product. Explain to me where the money is. You know where this goes. You know how this whole dance happens. What am I doing? And then I'll reach out to other developers in the area and go, hey, what are you paying for this? All right, I'll find somebody else. And that's really tough because they have no loyalty to you. But yeah, and you have to cut it off.
I feel like I get more frustrated with customers who are willing to pay that price for a kitchen and accept that level of quality than I do for the contractor doing that. Like, I'm more frustrated that people are willing to pay that price for that quality of work or, their lack of education.
Do you feel like the HGTV shows have made customers have more unrealistic expectations in terms of price versus end product?
I don't know.
See that.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do with that. I mean, I think that probably contributes to it some point. I think more so it's probably the same thing that you guys run into. I think that if you were a very high, or if you're on the higher end, higher quality spectrum of developers, you're going to be a rarity. And I think that, there's not a lot of contractors that put out a quality product at a fair price. So I think that there's just a massive surplus of bad contractors out there. There's, especially near me, in Massachusetts, you guys have a licensing requirement and testing, and there's kind of hoops to jump through. In New Jersey, you could register your business. You don't have to show proof of experience. You need your general liability insurance, and then you have a registration with the Division of Consumer Affairs. There's no licensing or anything. And it's like joked about at the beginning of the podcast. If somebody sued me and I went under, I could start a new LLC tomorrow under a different name and get new liability insurance and be back up and running. So I think that there's just so many people who are out there willing to do it for less. And I just had that conversation with a buddy of mine last week, and he said to me, the sad part is that people will do that project for the cost that those customers wanted to spend. And my response was, but they won't do what we do for that price. They're not putting the same product on the table for the price that we would charge. I think that that's probably the biggest contributing factor to people either having unrealistic expectations or accepting lower quality of work.
Yeah, I think that to answer your question, I think the people that are looking for that, and see the effect of HGTV are the people that get a lot of their leads from like Home Advisor and these different platforms where it's more of a lead generator in its volume than it is quality people coming to you. Maybe we just jumped over that level of people, but no one's coming to me wanting that bargain deal. It just,
they might take inspiration, but it's not, can you get this done for $5,000 and do it in a week?
I feel like I just sent you guys 2 emails last week with that.
You did.
I get them all the time. And it is extremely frustrating getting those emails. And I guess to a fault of my own, I look at it as to what I'm doing wrong, or how am I not marketing myself to be like, hey, we can't do a bathroom for $15,000. The fact that people come to me and that's their budget to do a larger master bathroom, and we want a tiled shower and a floating vanity, and it's like, that's not our market. We can't do that. And it is very frustrating to think that there's people out there who will tell those people they can do it for that.
I just got a lead last week that was like, I struggle with this part. And Nick, you said it earlier, like you want to do the kind of entry level. And I'm like, they emailed me, they're like, we have land, it's in Franklin, Mass. And I'm like, Franklin doesn't have the, market to hold what we build. And they're like, yeah, we want to do X amount of square foot. We love your work, blah, blah, blah. Our budget's like $500,000-$600,000. And I'm like, I turn to my wife and I'm like, I don't blame them at all. It's more like, how do I do that without giving them a 1,500 square foot house? Like,
right.
How do I, and I racked, it's one of those comments that comes up on your feed on your email, and it kind of rotates in your head for days.
Yeah.
Like you'll be driving home and you'll be like, how do I do that? What is the square footage? Like, what do I have to do? Like, how do I make that happen? Does it have to be overlay cabinets? Who can I use? What are we talking about? Is it all asphalt? Do we have like open cell foam? What do I have to go to? Is it cellulose?
We had a client last year, and they've actually delayed it, but a year to start. But it was the same thing. The numbers didn't work, and their budget wasn't going to move. And at that point, it was easier for me to just say it doesn't fit. But I did the same thing. I'm like, why can't I do this? Like their budget,
there's got to be a formula.
Their budget's $750 and it was a small little like.
I could do it.
Small house, and super modern, super cool. And I'm like, why can't that sounds like a lot of money to build this little house. Why can't we make that number work? And it was we went over and over and over through the budget, and we did the, John, you walked me through it. It's like, hey, figure out what it costs you, and then reverse engineer those numbers to figure out what you need to get all those numbers down to. And it's like, all right, well, those make sense, but there's no way I'm plumbing the whole house for $20,000.
Yeah, the fixture count doesn't change, so some of those numbers don't move. That spreadsheet, I got to get that spreadsheet to a point where anybody can use it.
Yeah,
because a lot of people email me for it. I'm like, not there yet.
Are you guys keeping your numbers relatively fluid based on market fluctuations? Like, are you in tune to that to say, hey, this is where we have to be at this point due to what's going on with the market right now?
Can you explain a little more?
So, like, your numbers, I know a lot of with development, it's numbers based. Are basically your line items and your profit and all that stuff, do you have an ability to, or are you in tune to market fluctuations to be like, hey, this is what's going on at this point. We need to build at this dollar per square foot in order to sell when we need to? Or are you consistently creeping your numbers up? Is the market just been that good that you're able to do that? Or are you that in tune to what's going on that you're consistently adjusting your pricing to kind of fit what's going on with the economy?
So I'd say that at the outset, we're running what we call like a sensitivity analysis. So we're going to run our numbers based on a number of different benchmarks and outcomes, and then we're going to adjust throughout the project. Like I'll have 10 versions of a pro forma by the time the project's done. The two major inputs, right? Sales and construction costs. So occasionally construction costs, I don't always buy all the trades early in the job, especially like drywall, paint. my tile guys, I find I do much better just waiting until the place is boarded and bring a couple painters through and let them see it. Like painters that price off of plans, you know.
There's always a fluff.
Was that?
If you're pricing off of plans, it's always a fluff factor. Where
Yeah.
if it's an active, you know, brick and mortar structure, you get better pricing as long as you, I'm not saying when it's plastered you get pricing done. I'm saying as long as there's a structure and there's something happening, I find I get my best pricing that way. Agreed.
And that's one of the nice things about, you know, not building, like if you're building for a client, you have to produce a price early in the project and then stand by it. But like every day that goes by on your own project, you can find, you know, a new substitute, like, oh, this is the same tile, but it's, you know, and grab it. Or, you know, the drywall plaster example we just talked about.
Yeah. I just did the one we have in Cohasset. I hesitantly gave a budget after walking the house. It's a brand new remodel. And I walked it for an hour, and then the client asked me for pricing, and they flew back to California. And I literally, as I put it, I threw softballs and beach balls at each line item. And it's now where it's like coming to reality, and it's like, oh, there's a pool, there's a party barn, there's this, there's that. And we joked about it today. I've been at or under every single one of those budgets. And the only thing that came in high was my AV. And you know what? It's kind of funny. It was a little frustrating today that we got this project. We ran at it pretty quick to get it started, and we brought in AV, and they gave me a bunch of pricing. I don't like pricing that comes through this portal that these guys have, where you can't just download a PDF and have it printed and kind of redline it. I can't stand that. So I asked people to kind of send it as a PDF. And so I get all these pricing, and they kind of just keep growing. Every proposal he gave me was like $60, $100, $180,000 for AV. And I was like, yo, what's up? And then they would call me and go, hey, did you talk to the client? Did you get an answer? And then I was like, why? You're pressuring me because these numbers are high and you want this number to go. Like, I was like, hold on. I'm not ready for it. We're not ready for the whole thing. But I was getting pressured on that line of the product. And then I stopped. I was like, hey, just give me a minute. I got to talk to the client. We were trying to develop all these other designs. I don't need to lock in a $180,000 AV package right this second. That's a place I can definitely value engineer down the road. And I get it. You need to value that. Then I called them back after like 3 weeks, and they go, it went to voicemail. And then he called me back and goes, hey, isn't it weird that I tried to get a hold of you for a week straight, and then when you called me, it went to voicemail? And I was like, no, I just assumed that you were busy. And it was just such a weird interaction I had with that whole situation, where it's like, and now my client reviews it all, and they're like, yeah, it's super high. So I call them like, I need your numbers to come down. We're going to try and hit 80 grand for the whole thing. That's lighting. You don't need to do every single light in the house. Oh, yeah, I can do that. And I'm like, now I don't want to use that person. Because if you can come down that easily from your labor price going from 160 down to $90 an hour, and then you're able to swap out product when I asked you to in the first place, why would you pressure me so hard in the beginning? Like, and you value these people that you have as subs, and it's like you were trying to take advantage of the project that we have in place. That is.
I don't know what I'm more envious of, the fact that your customers fly back to California after your meeting, that they want a party barn, or that their AV budget was $180,000. I'd take any one single.
But dude, you know how much I stress out about budget still? Like, I put that budget together on a napkin per se, typed it up all nice because they wanted a number, and now I still have to fit within those parameters, even though it's changed drastically. And I hold that number that I put on paper like to my heart, and it's like, oh geez, oh boy, what's gonna happen here? Like, you know, what am I? You know, it's like, oh, the hood is from California. Okay, was that in the number? Did I have that? Like, what was I doing? And I shake my head all the time. That's why my hair's like that, because it's just from pulling it. But no, I freak out. Like, it's to Dan, your point earlier is like, is it budgets or whatever? I know all those numbers are high. They still want to know where every dollar is going. Like, like my pool number was right on, which I thought was a shot in the dark with the coping being reclaimed granite. I was like, there's no way. That's a $50,000 budget right there. And I'm like, nailed it. But like the AV being off, like, how do I go back to that client and go, hey, he hit it? right? It doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound right. So no, I have to go find 2 new more AV guys that I can then comparable price against with the same components. Because he's like, I'll fly my guy out from Cali. I'm like, no, this is my crew. These are my people. Back off. This is my network, bro. Like, I don't want you GCing it myself. But no, I guess that was just a topic that was on my mind today. That I dealt with the conversation. I literally held my tongue going, what conversation am I having right now?
Yeah, not to mention if a guy has his number anchored on 180 grand and then he signs a contract for 80, I just always suspect that they're going to be looking for more elsewhere and not happy. And this isn't the job they wanted. It's like, sometimes it's best just to part ways.
I mean, we've done multiple projects.
Or they're going to cut corners because they know they're taking the lower number now.
I just think they were taking advantage. I think there was too much fluff involved in the first place. That's why I didn't present it right away.
It's a lot of fluff. 100 grand.
Dude,
well, it's insulting to somebody like you, Johnny, where you're putting all this time and effort into coming up with a budget. Sure, you say you're throwing beach balls at it, but you're still at least putting the effort into it, and you have some pride about your budget.
And they're based on numbers I've had, where it's like I've always joked in the past that my old boss walked through a house and goes, "That's 280 grand." I was like, "I'm never going to be a builder. I have no idea how he just came up with that value." And now I do it, and that's Tyler. You asked the question. I keep track of all my numbers. So it's like right now, Benny and I are trying to figure out how we create a system where we're not the ones paying the bills. But I still want to have a massive pulse on what numbers are costing, because I'll be the guy that goes into this project and someone will go, "Hey, I have a budget of 1.2 million. I literally need to know right then and there if that's a viable project. If I, for some reason, get to that meeting and I don't know that number, I want to know that, and I have value, I feel like, to the table. If I walk through and I go, that number's wrong. That number's wrong. Like, I just know it from just by having it all. And I feel like if I don't have that at my fingertips, then I've lost a massive resource for myself. And so we're trying to.
Yeah, I mean, to your point earlier, Tyler. I mean, our numbers never go down. They're always only going up. I mean, as labor increases, as materials costs increase, we're running that same analysis at the beginning, as Mark alluded to earlier, and we're running worst case scenarios and saying, if the market takes a 10% drop and we go over budget by 10%, can we still make money? And all that factors into the offers that we make on the properties that we're looking to do. But I don't think we've ever gone below what we've initially budgeted. It's just the nature of the beast, I think.
And I don't know what your guys' success rate is in terms of when you're sending bids out versus getting the paper signed. But for Dan and I, when we're making offers on places, running the numbers the way we do, we're looking at like 95% of the time, the seller just says, "No, it doesn't work for us." So to that end, it becomes more of a numbers game. Like, you have to make 100 offers to get 5 accepted. And I don't know what your success ratios are on that end, but I mean, if you know your numbers, you're not going to do a job where you're not going to make money either.
If I were to bid jobs, I'd probably be in that range. Get like 5% of them, maybe less.
I just kind of threw out the 5%. I don't think we've ever tracked to that detail.
I feel like if I were to bid jobs, like every lead that came to me, I'd probably be at 5%.
Yeah, it'd be pretty low.
But that's the competition. That's the name of the game.
But it's funny, when it's right. You know what I'm saying? Like, when that lead comes in and it all clicks, and for some reason you can sign that deal in like 3 days.
Yeah. I'll miss a bid, right? Like, I'll look at something and I'll miss something, and I'll see Dan and Ray take it down, and I'll watch the project evolve and see what ultimately gets approved and built, and maybe even watch the sales. And sometimes it's interesting to see if someone had an edge or a creative way of looking at a deal that I was totally blind to. And, I've certainly missed things. And I think on the flip side, I've seen things. And folks have said similar things back to me, like, "Damn, I never thought that church could be this," or
And I think that ultimately goes back to the everyone being wanting to be a developer and the quality of the ultimate quality of the building. Whereas, you know, if people don't know how to run their numbers, they're going to be tight on everything and they're going to have to skimp on everything. And if they're accepting more than, you know, you or I might accept, it's different.
My biggest pet peeve as a developer, if we're airing grievances, is developers who take entitlement risk and they confuse being lucky with being good, because entitlement risk is something that I'm unwilling to take. I think that it's not about your track record, who you are. It's just, it takes one abutter aggrieved to completely screw you up, and your whole boat is going to sink. So I see guys throw a big number with no contingency as to zoning, and it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, agreed.
What are you guys seeing for the rental market right now that you guys are holding with this COVID thing? There's a deep breath.
Yeah.
As of April, I think we had one person who hasn't paid across all of the units, and then as of May, everything except one building, which generally kind of lags behind because it's student rentals. Everything else has been paid, so we're lucky. I'd say we're lucky. Yeah.
How did you approach that with your renters? Did you
just tell them you're going to take the front door off or shut the water off? They usually pay.
Well, it depends, right? So we have some buildings that we have multiple property managers depending on where the buildings are located. So some of the property managers handled it for us, and I think they did a great job based on the records that we're seeing. And then the student rental building, for example, because we know sometimes international students are here. Even if they had a job and they got laid off, I don't think they're entitled to unemployment. So, you know, we had to have individual conversations through the property manager there. And we also had our attorney kind of send out a letter saying, hey, especially with it being a college building, don't have big parties. That's not smart. We don't want everybody to get sick. And also, by the way, rent is still due. And I think that worked out well. It's kind of like the compliment sandwich, you know, say something nice, then say what you really want to say, and then say something else at the end.
It's CEO
What are you
talk.
guys, Johnny, what are you guys seeing in the real high end market? What's your Magic 8 Ball say?
I don't know, man. I feel like we have one house on the market in Wellesley, and it's kind of sitting, but everything is. I don't know. I do feel like there's a whole, you know, what CEO Redfin said is going to be a huge push for the burbs. I think it is going to bounce up. I think a lot of people they're already coming out our way anyways to Wellesley and Metro West. And now we have one that's coming online right now, and there's a lot of activity around it, but that's around the 2-3 range, not the 3-7 range that we have at our other project. And it's funny, the 3-7 project, I've gotten more leads out of that build for custom homes. I mean, they walk it, they go, love the quality, this is awesome, can you build me something over here? And that's how I got the one in Cohasset. He walked it and then called me 2 days later and was like, I need you to build my stuff. No budget. I want good people, great quality. That's it. And I was like, is this fake? Am I on camera? Like, who are you? Almost hung up the phone. But yeah, we get a lot of that. So Nick, I don't know how you do your move, because I think that people will see that there's an investor involved and want to cut that out.
That's why I don't think I do it with an investor, and not meaning that I'm doing that now. Like, I certainly don't have the capital to just jump into building developments. But yeah, I don't know.
You don't need an investor to pony up that much money. I mean, we have investors in our projects, and they're supplementing down payments and mortgage payments and things like that, and they're not getting typically any equity at all. They're just getting it's straight debt. So, you know, there's so many ways to structure a deal or structure a project. And, you know, bank financing is obviously going to be the cheapest avenue, but you don't have to bring in an investor and give them a significant cut of the profit if you can find something that works for you guys.
I have a lot to think about.
Every time we get on a podcast with somebody who either like buys houses, develops houses, and the amount of math and economic foreshadowing and spreadsheets, and I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but Ty, I'll tell you what, the biggest input on all those spreadsheets is construction costs.
Yeah.
I can pretty much get a sense for my sales. I know what I'm buying for, but that one variable, I'll make a spreadsheet say anything I want. But with your experience and that background, that's the difference maker between success and failure.
Yeah, I just feel like even structuring deals and dealing with the financing and investors and all that, I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that.
The worst part is the mafia.
Yeah.
Like I would do it if somebody dealt with all of that.
I'm telling you though, like
Ray too.
Who asked earlier if you want to do big deals? Big deals mean like private equity partners, 10 different lending sources, your spread. That's kind of why my stuff is like me in a bank, and I'm the realtor. I'm the general contractor, and I do one deal at a time to two deals. I stagger them, and that's how I like to go. But that's what I'm saying is like you don't have to go 50 units and overly complicate things. If you flipped a condo, Nick, in the South End, you could do really well with your brand and your resume. You kill it.
Are you guys married? Any of you?
Yeah.
We're all married.
Yeah.
Kids?
No kids.
Yeah, kids.
2. And that you had them when you started the business?
No.
No. What do you mean when we start? Like at the
10
beginning
years
of
ago. Yeah.
No.
That's a really good point.
I was a year into my relationship.
To remember that memory.
Business relationship or
with my current wife. She was my girlfriend back then. But no, we just jumped in. We said we kind of felt the same way, right? Like we knew that as we got older, it was going to happen. Like we're going to get married, we're going to have kids, so we might as well just be stupid now. And if we're going to lose money on a project or learn the hard way, then let's just do it now before it gets even more real. It just gets harder as every year goes on. Yeah. So we get it completely. Would
you guys take the same risks that you did then now with your current relationships? What changed? Like, what would you do differently?
I think it would depend, right? Like I would still do that 3 family because if I was still in a permanent job, right? I would still do that 3 family.
Mark, you said no quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's disingenuous of me to say because I don't have kids, but I'm just kind of, I think that the risk, it's kind of a young man's game in some respects. Like I look back, I took some stupid risks. I hired subs with no insurance. I did work myself, just stuff that I would never get away with now. And the risk just grows every day. And like when you have nothing to lose, you can do stuff like that and you figure it out or you don't. And I think there's kind of a survivor's bias in a lot of these conversations, and I'm not immune to it. Like we're lucky. There's so many things that have been lucky. The rising tide, the market that's kept going up, that none of those subcontractors that I hired with no insurance didn't get hurt. Yeah. And so, there are a million and one things, and you're seeing guys that are standing right now, and there's plenty who haven't ascended the pyramid.
Yeah, I think that the hardest part with the kids and the responsibility in that point, it's not even once you're in it, it's just taking that first step. Like if you were to go out on your own, or John, you were looking to go out on your own, where you're going to give up that steady paycheck, you're going to give up the insurance and, having a consistent feed of work to go take a risk where you don't know what's around the corner. I think that's the hardest part. Once you jump off, it's like, all right, you're sinking or swimming. And I think that you do take a lot of risks at that point to keep things moving and to provide, and you work even harder. But I think making that decision is very tough.
Yeah, it was a calculated decision, right? Like I had just gotten married, and we had enough in the pipeline where we knew we could look out for a couple of years, and I had enough money in the bank where if shit hit the fan, I knew I could survive, and I knew I could always go back to my corporate job if I really wanted to or needed to. So, you know, it was kind of a calculated decision, and I knew we wanted to have kids at some point. So taking that risk then versus taking that risk now, it's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my emphatic yes was to just do one. I'm not saying go out there and just say like, oh man, I got to do like 7. I would start with 1.
Do you guys think you'd work way less if you didn't have kids? I would.
I think I would get a lot more done.
I mean, I don't know if I'd be as driven if I didn't have kids. I think that a lot of it's personality type, but I think that spark. I remember when our first daughter was born, we went from labor and delivery to the room that we were staying in, and from the walk out of labor and delivery till we got to that room, I was just this anxious mess where I'm like, I got to go out. I got to start working. I can't stay overnight. I got to land jobs. I need this work. And that just kind of started at that point 6 years ago. And I felt like it hasn't stopped since.
I also feel like when you have your girlfriend and it turns into that wife part of it, you try and represent that relationship in your family at that point to a great level. But then you have kids and it's like, what if you want it to almost be, what if someone's talking about you in front of your kids?
Yeah.
And you're not there. And that's how I think about my life right now. It's like before it was like, am I a good representation of my wife and my family? And then it was like my kids, it like the ante got pushed up even higher, that like if a sub or anybody, I always think about this, I never say it, is if I died tomorrow, what would they say? Like not at the funeral, but like 3 to 5 rows back. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that thing was kind of a prick. Like you know, and maybe my kid's back there. That's what I worry about, is the 5th row of that conversation. And it's weird.
You can't worry about that.
Yeah.
You can't. You got to do you.
I don't know if you know about me, but I worry about all the stupid shit that you should.
John, would you marry for money if you could go back?
No, absolutely not.
She's not. All right, she's not going to listen to this. Now, what's the answer?
She won't listen to it anyways. Dude, I got super lucky. She's a rock star.
Oh,
So
man.
you guys started the podcast. How many episodes are you guys in?
Almost at 50.
Wow,
Nice.
are they catching up?
How's it going?
You know, we're really enjoying it. I think it's like our own kind of PhD, right? Like we get to talk to some of the smartest guys and spend 2 hours with these attorneys who bill at $500 an hour or whatever. And as you guys know, I think some of the best conversation is even when the microphones turn off.
Yeah.
And we also enjoy certainly putting that knowledge out there and the feedback from listeners and from
You guys have good feedback?
Yeah, we get a lot of like random DMs or emails and stuff. So
That's what
just
fuels
me.
the tank, man.
That's just me from a different account.
yeah.
He runs like 8. Town of Sherborne is John.
Do you guys record?
Oh, that's all very good reviews. Shit. Damn,
You record once a week?
Yeah, we do. We try to come out every Tuesday with a new episode. How many more episodes do you guys think you guys have in the tank?
In the tank? Oh,
I mean,
a
how
lot.
long can you go? Keep
I
going.
think, yeah.
It's bottomless, bro.
I think it will continue to evolve. But I mean,
I feel like if we haven't given up now,
Seriously.
or like a year ago or 2 years ago, that we really have no excuse at this point now to pull the plug.
I feel like we've definitely hit lulls, and I think when we weren't being consistent, when we weren't scheduling people, and there's definitely been, even individually, like all 3 of us have had points where it's just like, this is just tiring. But then we get that one message where it's like, dude, you have no idea how much that helped me this week. And then it's like, yep, tank's full. Let's go.
That's cool.
Yeah,
So
I feel like a lot of that's behind us. Even just Nick took care of scheduling things out, and I think that's just having stuff in the pipeline, not having to worry about week to week or trying to land somebody is
Panicking
huge.
days before, hours before.
So much easier.
Yeah, it's been super helpful, and it's also put us in an like you said, eliminating the panic, but also just like being able to prepare to like, all right, these are the people that are going to be on. Well, Usually it's one person, not three of you. But
It's the
We're
first.
including Ray number
Four.
2.
Yeah, that's four.
Yeah.
But usually, we get the opportunity to like understand a little bit about what we're gonna talk about, and it's never structured, which that's what we all love about it. It's just it's a casual conversation and let everyone kind of talk about what they want to talk about and let it evolve. But just we've been able to reduce some of the stress related to particularly the podcast, which has allowed us to be more invested in each episode.
Why, you guys wrapping up soon?
No, we're just hoping to figure out our audio engineering issues and then continue.
We just figured them out like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I told
For
them
the
that.
most part.
It's all about the mics.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't gotten Zoom bombed, so that's good.
Or bad. I've been kind of looking forward to that.
Is that when someone jumps in randomly?
Like
Yeah.
gets naked or.
That happened in the city of Boston this past week, I think. Somebody Zoom bombed one of their meetings with some photos, and they had to cancel the meeting, and everybody was embarrassed. It was on Boston.com.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's a thing, Tyler.
How does that happen?
We've done a lot of Zoom calls, and I've never been Zoom bombed.
Well, I think it's if you have like 50 or 100 people, like it's
Yeah.
almost like a public forum.
Yeah.
It's like one of the people on that public forum decides to start sharing their screen.
Or you don't like password protect the meeting or something.
Gotcha.
We could do that on one of like the fine home building webinars.
I don't think you're supposed to tell anybody you're gonna do it. You guys got lots of reviews. 101 reviews, 5 stars, all of them.
I didn't know that.
Tyler requests like the 3s
Yeah, I like that better.
because he
Most of those are my mom. And
Well, the 3s are more fun to read.
Yeah.
I listened to your episode where you had that one, and Johnny, you were like, I'm not going to get into it. And then you're like, you know what? Let's get into it. And that was fun.
Yeah, I feel like
The review.
I like the negative reviews. It amazes me how much time people have. I feel like if I didn't like something, I don't know if I would take the effort to give it a poor review.
But I think it's also so easy to do so. Like if it actually took a lot of effort for people, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's so easily accessible for them to jump on. And half the time you see people with negative reviews, you go onto their profile, and the only last 5 reviews they've left are all negative.
Right.
They've never left a good review ever.
You can
So
look at
it's-
people's reviews.
Yeah, no, I get cranky.
But
Like
props
late
to you
night.
guys, and anyone who does this, you're putting a target on your back. There,
Sure.
you're gonna do a lot of good, but you're definitely gonna aim a lot of negativity your way.
I got a great one today or yesterday was like the clamps. I posted
Yeah.
all the clamps around the elliptical stair,
Yeah.
and it was like, does anyone want to guess how many? And someone wrote back, no one cares. I was like, really? I was like, out of all people
Ouch.
that commented, I think you might care the most.
Go back to their account, find their cell, and just text them every day how many. 28, 29, 30.
Well, we appreciate you guys being on tonight and hanging out for 2.5 hours here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate you guys having us, and this has been really
I
fun.
thought this would be more rowdy.
It started
kinda got a
pretty
little-
rowdy.
Yeah.
Well, we put out a few fires early, but
Yeah.
I thought you guys were going to be aggressive. I thought you guys had like this energy from...
This was chill.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's,
I did think-
it's
I
20 to
thought-
9 at night on Thursday.
I did think
keeps
Mark
track of
was
the
gonna
time when it's a good time?
Start swinging at us, like Kanye West and
No.
Hey, who are you,
No.
Taylor, or are you Kanye?
it's a great question.
Are we Taylor? We're Taylor Swift.
I have no idea what you're even talking about.
No way.
I have no idea.
No. Do you
No,
know
I
who
really
Kanye
don't.
West is?
I know who it is. I have no idea what you're
I
talking
know who
about.
it is. Who he
It was,
is.
it was like our 4th episode, and we needed listeners. So we
You were at the bar.
Go
We
after
were
the
at
big
where were we? In Faneuil Hall somewhere doing a live thing. We all-
I don't know.
you
Someone
guys
tagged
rocked the
me or
live.
sent it to me, and I was like, "What is this?" And it's like, "I'm calling out the Modern Craftsman." I was like, "All right,
Oh, that was Mark.
yeah."
It was
And then you guys would DM us every week. I'm like, "We don't have our schedule together, guys." Like,
Not gonna
hold on.
lie,
Hey,
I was
we'll get
asking
back to
about.
you. And then
I was
finally I get
asking
it
about
together. I
the
was like, "Hey,
Kanye
schedule."
thing.
Oh, Kanye.
How'd you guys rock the live? We haven't done one yet. Did you
It
guys?
wasn't really live.
We
It
were
was
pretty- no,
pre-recorded. No, we didn't like send it out live. We weren't broadcasting live. We recorded it at a bar and then went through post still. But that was fun.
But yeah,
it wasn't like it wasn't live streamed or anything like that.
You just had a live event.
Yeah, exactly.
How'd it go?
I was gonna ask if you're still doing them, but that's a dumb question right now.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun.
You guys have a lot of people, right? Like 200 people?
Definitely.
Yeah, there were like 200 people there, and it was good to like get the audience involved and get them to ask questions and stuff like that.
For sure.
Props to Ricky too and Volney, because they have huge social media reach and they put those events together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Does he have a sunglass sponsor? Like, how does that work?
The goggle game.
I think Dan's part of that, and Ray is not happy.
No, that was a joke. I brought it up on the thing as a joke.
I think it's sophomoric. Sorry.
You think it what?
It's a little sophomoric.
What is that?
Sophomoric?
Sophomore.
Am I saying it right?
Is that an
like
adjective?
you're acting like a sophomore in high school or college or something.
I didn't even know that was a word.
It's like kind of bro-y, but it's his thing, you know.
Dude, it's like the kid on my soccer team in high school who refused to wear the white socks. You know, he wore yellow socks and everybody knew him. Everyone's like, Robbie's that striker who wears the fucking yellow socks. So every time someone talks about the goggles, he's winning.
I know.
Who wears goggles? I'm out of the loop. I'm so far out of the loop. I apologize.
Guys, this was fun. I do have to bounce. I'm late for a trivia thing with some friends.
No worries.
We've been doing
is that allowed?
That is.
We've been doing
definitely
weekly COVID trivia.
That sounds sophomoric, but guys, no, seriously, really appreciate it, and good luck with the podcast, and excited to see you guys keep rocking. And much success to you guys, and we'll see you around Boston when we're allowed to hang out again.
Thanks for the
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks again, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Later.
See you, boys.
But we do have one. I started my construction business in 2014, and it's good to hear other perspectives and how other guys in the trade are doing things on job sites. They keep things real and talk about real issues that come up. So, yeah, it's good. But if you guys, I'm assuming that we're gonna get 7 by the time they hear that episode. But if you guys didn't, and or if you guys haven't left a review and we're not at 700 yet, make sure you do, because we're gonna give out a handful of hats. I don't remember the quantity. However many John has, 5 hats to the random 5, or we have 7 to go right now. But once we hit 7 reviews, we'll pick random 5 people that have left us a review. So
yeah. So if you leave a 5-star, it doesn't tell us that you left that. So ideally, leave a comment in the review. Sorry,
touché. Did a terrible job explaining that. But hey, it's Thursday. It's late. It's 2.5 hours.
It was a good real estate podcast. It was good.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that they're continuing, because I feel like when we were around 50, we probably had very similar thoughts. It was like, man, this is just so much work.
Like
I can see the issues they're having. It makes it really complicated.
Yeah.
Like sound and audio and all that stuff, because that's the only thing you can really bring to the table.
Yeah, I feel like it's tough, because I think that one of the most difficult parts of podcasting is that you don't have immediate feedback.
Mm.
And even the feedback that you get it's a week later, it's after the fact. You're out of the conversation, the topic's off your head. It's not like you're having a conversation with an audience live, and your audience is giving you feedback. Like, so much of this is just you're having a conversation with people, and there's no immediacy of that feedback, or the issues, or people saying, hey, I can relate. So it does become mundane at points.
So if you guys haven't checked out their podcast, it is Real Estate Addicts, and as always, you know where to find us. Stay tuned. Next week we have Scott from Axiom Luxury Homes. We're going to dig into his pro soccer career and why he chose to leave that and become a home builder.
Who is this guy? What's his handle?
Axiom Luxury Homes.
Never heard.
Talk to him next week.